Chapter 1146, In Danger, Artifact Spirit, What's the situation outside? Can you endure the attacks from the vengeful spirits? Jian Chen asked. Master, the vengeful spirits outside are extremely powerful. There is also the invasion of extremely powerful Yin Qi and the grudges of the dead. I can resist it, but not for long. The artifact spirit's figure appeared stern. He had already fused with the artifact, using all the energy that the artifact possessed to resist the vile energies. If you can't break free from the encirclement, get as close to Rui Jin and the others as possible. Get them to leave the death nest with the artifact, Jian Chen heavily said. His complexion was very bad. The dangers of the death nest had far exceeded his expectations. He never thought that he would still be in so much danger even with Rui Jin and the other two. The Saint artifact followed his orders and immediately began to move toward Rui Jin and the others. However, the situation was still horrible. The artifact was sent flying time and time after again by the vengeful spirits, unable to approach Rui Jin and the others. Also, the two vengeful spirits that had turned into dense mist plagued the Saint artifact. The pure energies constantly gnawed away at the Saint artifact. On the other side, Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian were encircled by the many vengeful spirits as well. The battle that occurred could be described as devastating. If it were not for the fact that the death nest was surrounded by a large formation, probably the entire region would have collapsed and shattered. The Saint Emperor vengeful spirits that encircled Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian had now increased to over 80. The area became filled with vile energies with so many vengeful spirits in one region. It seemed to become a domain of ghosts, and the vengeful spirits were only rapidly increasing. If it was any other day, it would have been impossible for so many vengeful spirits to gather here, but it just happened to be the moment before the saint's fruit fully ripened. The vengeful spirits possessed a fatal attraction to the fragrance of the fruit, so almost all the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits of the third zone had been drawn over. The three of them all possessed origin energy treasures that protected both their bodies and their souls, allowing them to resist the vile energies. This was why they were still alive even after being trapped in a heavy encirclement. If any other experts fell into a similar situation, all they could do was desperately run. Even true Saint Emperors would not be exceptions. However, it was difficult for the three of them to escape now that they had been surrounded by so many vengeful spirits. Hong Lian, help me create a path. I'll go fetch the Saint artifact. The situation there doesn't seem great, Rui Jin called out. Although there were several dozen vengeful spirits he needed to keep at bay, he had always been paying attention to Jian Chen's side. Sadly, he was in no shape to care for them. Hong Lian wore her armor made from feathers. A layer of white flames burned around her as she used her origin energy treasure to fight off the vengeful spirits. Her flames were the bane of vile existences. They were very effective against the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits, but the vengeful spirits were completely unkillable. They would only disperse after all the vile energies within them had been exhausted, which was why it was very difficult for Hong Lian to break free after being surrounded by several dozen vengeful spirits. On their own, the vengeful spirits were definitely not as powerful as living Saint Emperors. However, they possessed another aspect that made them even more terrifying than living Saint Emperors: their difficulty to kill. Hong Lian seemed to have turned into a goddess of fire. Flames rolled around her impressively. Suddenly, she produced a clear cry that was sent to the sky. It was not a human sound, but a phoenix's cry. It rang across the desolate land. Hong Lian turned into a phoenix bathed in white flames in the blink of an eye. A thumb-sized bead hovered above the phoenix's head, shining with a hazy light which protected Hong Lian's body. The legacy treasure of the Phoenix clan had also changed to match the shape of Hong Lian's body. It still remained a suit of armor made from feathers as tightly clung to Hong Lian's 10-meter-long body. With a flap of her wings, flames immediately gushed forward endlessly. They burned everything in the surroundings into ash, forcing countless vengeful spirits to retreat temporarily. The scorching god fire hairpin burned with white flames. Under Hong Lian's control, it shot out as a white streak of light, collapsing many vengeful spirits in its trajectory. However, the vengeful spirits reformed again very quickly. At the same time, a golden sword chi shot out from beside her. Before the vengeful spirits could completely recondense their forms, they were dispersed once again by the golden sword chi. A passageway appeared. After the passageway formed, Rui Jin charged along this path as he flickered with golden light. As he moved, 2 palms from the vengeful spirits viciously struck his back, which caused him to shake violently. Fortunately, he was protected by the origin energy treasures, so he remained unharmed. Without any hesitation, he transformed into a golden streak of light that shot toward the Saint Artifact. The Saint Artifact was still being knocked around by a few vengeful spirits. Although the spirits did not possess strength equal to when they were still alive, they were still in the realm of Saint Emperors and, thus, extremely powerful. They were enough to threaten the Saint Artifact. The golden light from the tower had dimmed after resisting the attacks, and the physical shape had even become a little deformed. The situation within the artifact space was even worse. The white, hazy sky had now turned to darkness. This was the first night the artifact space had experienced in over 1,000,000 years. All the Class 7 magical beasts that lived in there looked at the sky in horror, as if it was the end of the world. The artifact spirit was already using everything he had. He used the energy within the entire space to resist the invasion of the vile energies. The two were locked in an endurance battle, seeing who could last longer. The origin energy of Radiant Saint Force is the bane of these vile energies. It can purify them, but it's a pity that the vile energies are equivalent to Class 9 in strength. My origin energy is only Class 8, lamented the artifact spirit. His voice was filled with an unwillingness to give in. He was the natural enemy of these vile energies, yet he was suppressed. It was extremely saddening. Although the Saint Artifact was equivalent to a Saint Emperor in the artifact space, that was only a regular Saint Emperor. He was nowhere near Saint Emperors who stood at the apex. Coupled with the fact that the invading energies came from 2 Saint Emperor vengeful spirits and the brutal attacks from multiple vengeful spirits outside, he was forced into a horrible situation. Rui Jin made it in time. The sacred dragon's sword glowed bright. With a shocking might, he swung out several times and collapsed the vengeful spirits who were attacking the Saint Artifact. Afterward, he quickly charged into the black mist created by the 2 vengeful spirits and rescued the Saint Artifact from danger. As soon as he had gotten a hold of the Saint Artifact, the vengeful spirits around him condensed again. They all charged at him, and in the distance, the several dozen vengeful spirits that had encircled him earlier rushed over as well. They all surrounded him once more. In the distance, several huge demonic figures appeared. They were all 10 meters tall and surrounded by surging vile energies. One of them was Gustis. The other vengeful spirits around him were very powerful. They were not on Gustis' level but not too far away either. They were all berserkers of the 100 races like Gustis. They were extremely powerful. Chapter 1147, Hiding into a Miniature World, 1. Suddenly, Gustis and the towering vengeful spirits beside him moved out. They charged toward Rui Jin as black blurs, raising their fists to strike him. The attacks were swift and sharp. Each fist was heavy, enough to collapse whole mountains and rivers. Rui Jin placed the Saint Artifact under his armor and used the origin energy in his armor to create a barrier around him, warding off the invasion of the vile energies. Afterward, he poured all his power into fighting off the vengeful spirits. If Rui Jin was fighting them one-on-one, none of the vengeful spirits were his opponent. Even if several of them worked together, they would not be able to fight Rui Jin. However, there were 20 to 30 of them right now. There was just far too many, making it rather difficult for Rui Jin to withstand the blows. Rui Jin's pressure increased abruptly when Gustis and the others joined in. Without fighting for very long, a few beams of black light condensed from vile energies struck Rui Jin's body. The powerful force sent Rui Jin backward, forming 2 deep canals in the ground due to his feet. Before Rui Jin could even stabilize himself, Gustis had silently caught up. He hurled a fist with lightning-like speed at Ruo Jin's chest. As his punch traveled through the air, the surrounding space trembled violently. The vile energies that filled the surroundings gathered wildly, making the punch become much stronger. Bang! With a loud sound, Ruo Jin was blown back by Gusty's punch. He flew 1,000 meters before finally landing beside Hong Lian. Hong Lian remained in her phoenix form. She flapped her wings constantly, dousing the region with a sea of fire. The figures of countless vengeful spirits flickered within the pure white flames. Even though the fire was super effective against them, they didn't fear death, so they continued to charge into the sea of flames. Densely packed attacks were launched at Hong Lian in a blanketing fashion, but they were all blocked by her feather mail. Ruo Jin stood up. Although he seemed like he was in an extremely horrible condition, he was uninjured. Saint Emperors would struggle to bypass the defense of the Origin Energy armors. The three of them could fight Saint Emperors without suffering defeat exactly because of this piece of armor. More and more vengeful spirits have come here, and they possess a huge advantage here. Once all of our energy is depleted, we won't be able to replenish it. We can't continue to fight with them like this anymore, or it'll be very horrible for us, Ruo Jin commented with a heavy voice. His armor shined with a hazy light, protecting him from the flames. However, the terrifying temperature was still very uncomfortable. There are over 100 vengeful spirits here now. It's virtually become an impenetrable prison for us. Even if we use the Origin Energy treasures, it'll be very hard to break free, the Phoenix grimly replied in human tongue. An idea flashed through Ruo Jin's eyes. He said, Hong Lian, I might have an idea. We need to charge over and reunite with Yu right now. And then, the two of you will block the vengeful spirits together to make time for me. I'll cast a supreme secret technique of the Dragon Clan and create a miniature world. We can hide in there and break free from these vengeful spirits. Ruo Jin, are you certain that it'll work? Hong Lian asked. This is a supreme secret technique of the Dragon Clan. Even in ancient times, it belonged to the very peak. There shouldn't be a problem if I use it to break free from these vengeful spirits. Also, the situation's already like this. We can try it even if it doesn't work, said Ruo Jin. Hong Lian stared at Ruo Jin for a while, before working with him to deal with all the vengeful spirits that obstructed their way. They approached where Yu was. Around a dozen vengeful spirits collapsed from their weapons, but they recondensed very quickly. They continued to charge at the two of them without any fear. At the same time, Gustis and his berserkers struck out at the same time, which made it difficult for the two of them to advance. They were attacked from every direction, and whenever they advanced a little, the powerful attacks from the vengeful spirits would land on them. It was not enough to injure them, but the powerful force caused them to back up involuntarily. Ruo Jin and Hong Lian finally made it to Yu's side after a tremendous amount of effort. The three of them had gathered together once again after being separated by all the vengeful spirits. I'll use a supreme secret technique of the Dragon Clan. You two cover me, Ruo Jin called out before putting away the sacred dragon's sword. He began to shine with a dazzling gold light as densely packed dragon scales appeared all over him. They covered every inch of his body, including his face. Ruo Jin formed seals with his hands and spoke in incomprehensible and unfathomable ancient dragon tongue. It sounded like a chant as it spread through the surroundings with a mysterious energy. Golden lines of inscriptions floated out from Ruo Jin's scales, gathering before him. World of Feathers. Transform, 9 refined god fire feather male. Hong Lian also cried out. She raised her head to the sky and produced a long phoenix's cry. The armor on her separated at that moment, turning into red feathers which filled her surroundings. Every single feather was several dozen meters long and burned with scorching white flames. Origin energy circulated within them, allowing them to possess a weird presence. The countless feathers formed a huge cage, enveloping a radius of 100 meters. It kept the vengeful spirits outside. All these feathers were fate feathers. Each member of the Phoenix clan only had a single fate feather, so they had all been left behind by ancestors that had passed away. Every feather belonged to a Class 9 divine phoenix, so they possessed unfathomable power. The feather male was already extremely powerful since it had been created from all the fate feathers of past ancestors. Coupled with its mutation into an origin energy treasure, its quality was raised to another level. Thus, Saiyan emperors could not break through. As a result, Hong Lian's huge cage of feathers could actually keep the attacks of the vengeful spirits at bay temporarily. Booms constantly rang out as countless vengeful spirits dwelled in the flames, enduring the consequences of being weakened to attack the feathers. They all lacked any self-awareness, so they did not understand pain, let alone death. This was why every single one of them was so bold. The huge cage began to tremble violently under the attacks from so many vengeful spirits. If it were not a treasure with origin energy, it probably would have shattered long ago. After all, it was resisting attacks from over 100 Saint Emperors, not just one or two. If it was any other divine hall resisting the attacks instead, it probably would have shattered instantly. Hong Lian hovered in the sky. She opened her wings and an endless amount of white flames shot out. They shot unceasingly into the cage of feathers. She was using everything she had right now to keep drive the force of the origin energy treasure. He Yu grimly stood beside Hong Lian. He looked around with his sharp gaze, covering Hong Lian with all his attention. Now that all the vengeful spirits had been blocked outside by Hong Lian and her armor, He Yu had lost his opponent. There was nothing he could do right now. Although he was also in possession of origin energy treasure, he was different from Hong Lian, unable to use them in such miraculous ways. Hong Lian and Rui Jin's origin energy treasures were all legacy items of their clans. They also possessed records of the ways to use the treasures along with secret techniques. He Yu lacked this wealth in knowledge. Rui Jin's secret technique had already approached the end. Lines of golden inscriptions constantly emerged from his scales, gathering before his chest. The space around him began to pulse in an unstable fashion. The shield from the feathers began to tremble more and more. The area it covered had already shrunk to a radius of 50 meters from the initial 100, and it also showed signs of collapsing. Hong Lian trembled violently. It was extremely strenuous for her to block so many attacks from vengeful spirits just by herself. It's a pity I'm only at the peak of Class 8. I can't use all the strength within the 9 refined Godfire feather male. If I was at Class 9 and used the world of feathers, the vengeful spirits would struggle to break through the shield even if there were twice as many of them outside. Hong Lian endured the difficult task. She was filled with an unwillingness to give in. It was not because her secret technique was too weak, nor was it because the origin energy treasure was not strong enough. Instead, it was because she was not powerful enough. Chapter 1148, Hiding into a Miniature World, 2, Hong Lian, you have to endure it. Rui Jin's secret technique is almost complete, He Yu encouraged Hong Lian. He also felt rather worried inside, but there was nothing he could do. He was just a mutated divine alligator. He possessed the battle prowess of beasts of antiquity, but he lacked a bloodline legacy, so he obviously did not possess any inherited secret techniques. Hong Lian began to tremble more and more. She could not last much longer. The vengeful spirits outside attacking the barrier of feathers increased, reaching 150. At the same time, many more vengeful spirits could be seen in the distance, all having been drawn over by the saint's fruit. However, all the vengeful spirits that hurried over discovered the same situation without any exceptions. They all took part in attacking Hong Lian and the others. It was an instinctive impulse. Boom! With a great rumble, a feather was blown away. A gap immediately appeared in the world of feathers and Gustis appeared there with the other huge vengeful spirits. They allowed the endless white flames to scorch them. With a flash, He Yu had disappeared from beside Hong Lian. He immediately went to plug the gap, becoming embroiled in a great battle with Gustis and the others. He used everything he had to keep them out. At this moment, another boom rang out. A second feather was blown away, creating a second gap in the world of feathers. Hong Lian produced a phoenix's cry and controlled the scorching godfire hairpin with her mind. It flew over with scorching flames, blocking the gap. The pressure they faced now was only increasing. Not only did maintaining the secret technique drastically deplete Hong Lian's energy, the vengeful spirits outside were also rapidly increasing. Not much later, a third boom rang out. Another feather was blown away and a third gap appeared. He Yu and Hong Lian both looked extremely ugly. They were already using everything they had right now. They had nothing to guard the third gap. But, at this moment, the Golden Saint artifact flew away from Rui Jin. It glowed with a golden light and Jian Chen and Tai Ta silently appeared. Without stopping at all, they immediately charged to the third gap to fill it together. Jian Chen pushed his chaotic body to the limits, and Tai Ta was surrounded by a dense layer of golden light. They did this to resist the terrifying waves of heat from all directions. The two of them were completely fine now. Their wounds from before had been healed by the Saint artifact, and they had returned to peak condition. However, it was still extremely difficult for the two of them to block one gap. They became injured again very soon. In a few seconds, a fourth gap appeared in the wall of feathers. A few vengeful spirits immediately rushed in and charged toward Hong Lian and Rui Jin. The hairpin which plugged the first gap flew back as a streak of white light. It passed through the vengeful spirits with lightning-like speed, causing them to collapse. However, they condensed once again the next moment. With the departure of the origin energy artifact, the first gap immediately became wide open. Vengeful spirits began to charge in from outside. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, Hong Lian, and He Yu's expressions all changed, but at this moment, a dazzling light illuminated the surroundings, turning the death nest into a golden world. The surrounding space violently shook as spatial force rocketed around, impacting the entire region. The miniature world is complete. Everyone enter quickly. At the same time, Rui Jin's voice rang out. A 3-meter-tall gate stood before him, shining with blinding golden light. It was impossible to see what was inside. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and He Yu all rejoiced, as if they had seen a strand of hope in utter despair. They all abandoned their enemies and charged toward the golden gate as fast as they could. Hong Lian also reverted to human form. She was pale white right now and exhaustion filled her face. She entered the golden gate with a flash. The countless feathers that had formed the world of feathers immediately collapsed with a wave of her hand, turning into red feathers that shot toward her. They reassembled into a complete piece of armor on her body. All the vengeful spirits immediately gushed in now that the obstruction was gone. They all charged toward the golden gate, but just as they approached it, the gate suddenly vanished. Bang! 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 With several consecutive sounds, all the vengeful spirits collided with one another. Two of them were even smashed to pieces and reduced to black mist, but they instantly reformed once again. Now that the golden gate had vanished, the death nest had recovered its usual peace. The vengeful spirits all quickly calmed down after losing their targets. They did not continue to fight and, instead, behaved like nothing had happened at all. They slowly made their way to the saint's fruit before all sitting down near the fruit to meditate. They absorbed the fragrance of the fruit to consolidate their form. Here was a golden world. It was desolate and barren as far as the eye could see, without any signs of life. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, He Yu, Jian Chen, and Tai Ta all sat on the ground there. They seemed rather tired, Hong Lian in particular. Her beautiful face was dyed white while Jian Chen and Tai Ta's situations were not fantastic either. They were heavily injured again and right after they had recovered. We've finally broke free from those troublesome things. Rui Jin, won't those bloody spirits find us if we hide in here? He Yu sighed a deep breath of relief, but he was rather worried at the same time. Rui Jin shook his head. This is a miniature world created from a supreme secret technique of my dragon clan. It's equivalent to carving open a whole different space, so it's extremely difficult to sense even for those who possess a great mastery over the mysteries of the world, let alone those vengeful spirits. Don't worry, we're completely safe hiding in here. It's just that casting the secret technique is very exhaustive. Hey, you finally relaxed. He said, that's good then. I underestimated these vengeful spirits too much. I never thought that they'd be so hard to deal with once so many gathered together, forcing us into such a horrible position. These vengeful spirits may not be as powerful as when they were still alive, but they are even more terrifying than Saint Emperors in a certain sense. If Saint Emperors were struck by our origin energy weapons, they would definitely be heavily injured and would weaken, but these vengeful spirits are different. They're basically unkillable, Hong Lian said as well. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Let's quickly make use of this time and properly recover before we talk about what we're going to do next, said Rui Jin. Afterward, Rui Jin, Heiyu, Hong Lian, and Tai Ta all began focus on recovering from the overconsumption of energy. They needed to raise their strength back to the peak, or it would be impossible for them to recover at all once they were outside again. Jian Chen also sat on the ground and silently recovered. He had not exhausted a lot of chaotic force in the intense battle earlier. Every single strand of chaotic force from the third layer of the chaotic energy was condensed from a tremendous quantity of energy, so it was consumed incredibly slowly in ordinary battles. At the same time, his chaotic force could not be recovered just because he wanted to, he needed to refine it from large amounts of energy. 7 days later, all of them were back in peak condition. Rui Jin cast a secret technique of the Dragon Clan, using a droplet of dragon blood to create a mirror. He could clearly see the situation of the saint's fruit and the area around it. The saint's fruit remained the same as before, but it was surrounded by vengeful spirits. All of them were Saint Emperors, and there was actually no less than 500 of them. There were humans, magical beasts, and members of the 100 races. All of their scalps tingled just from looking at them all. I never thought there would actually be so many Saint Emperors from the ancient times. The amount between the 3 races is actually terrifying, Jian Chen sighed in amazement. The ancient times were just far too glorious. Chapter 1149, The Saint's Fruit Ripens. Rui Jin stared at the vengeful spirits with mixed emotions. He heavily said, the ancient times were a prosperous era. There were definitely more Saint Emperors in that age than right now, and the vengeful spirits we see right now are only the ones who have fallen in war. I believe there's a huge portion of corpses that Mo Tianyun did not get his hands on. Jian Chen silently nodded. He knew that Rui Jin and Hong Lian's understanding in regard to the situation of the ancient times was no less than the protector clans since they possessed their inherited memories. There's so many vengeful spirits outside right now. Once the fruit ripens, how should we go retrieve it? And how should we leave after we do retrieve it? Hong Lian frowned. All of them fell silent with that. They all began to think of methods to flee, as there were just too many vengeful spirits outside. Once they became surrounded, it would be difficult to break free even for Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Heiyu. They could only protect themselves temporarily, and once all of their energy had been consumed, they would fall into great anger as well. The Death Nest seems to be a whole different world. Space cannot be ripped open, so we can't leave using a space gate, said Heiyu. Tai Ta glanced past the 4 of them. Slightly hesitating, he said, I might have a way out. With that, all of them looked to Tai Ta. They dared not to underestimate Tai Ta since he possessed the memories of the war god. Tai Ta, what method do you have to break free from the encirclement of the vengeful spirits? Jian Chen immediately asked. Tai Ta scratched his head. He said with a muffled voice, I have the mysteries of war. I can break through the limitations of space and move through the void. I can go wherever I want to go, so after careful consideration, I should be able to leave here, but when I use the mysteries of war, I'm the only one who can leave. I can't bring anyone with me, but if you all enter the Saint Artifact, I should be able to leave with the Saint Artifact. The Death Nest is virtually a whole different world. It's different from outside. Are you sure your mysteries of war can successfully be used here? Tai Ta scratched his head heavily. Only after some thought did he say with some uncertainty, "My mysteries of war seem to be very powerful. They can break through the limitations of space anywhere, so there should be no problems. Since you're uncertain, we definitely can't rely on it. If we become encircled again, we probably won't even have time to construct a miniature world. After all, there are more vengeful spirits outside than before," Hong Lian expressionlessly replied. "It doesn't matter if it'll be successful or not. It's a chance at least. We can still get Tai Ta to try if we really run out of options. Though, for the sake of safety, we should make some more preparations." "Hong Lian, it'll be up to us to create supreme killing formations now," Rui Jin said. Hong Lian slightly frowned. She said, "My Phoenix clan has 3 great killing formations. They could slay saint emperors in ancient times. I have the method of casting them in my inherited memories, but it needs just far too many materials. Where would we find these materials?" Rui Jin looked at Jian Chen. He said, "Jian Chen, you've obtained quite a few space rings from experts over the past few years. I think there should at least be a few materials that can be used for formations." Jian Chen pulled out a space ring without any hesitation. He said, "I've stored all the space rings I've recently obtained in there. I hope there are some useful items in it." With that, Jian Chen passed it to Rui Jin. The space ring contained several dozen other space rings, and it was everything he had obtained over the past few years. He had checked through all the items in there, passing on a few valuable items to the flame mercenaries. The remaining items were just a mixed assortment. There were even many objects that he had no idea what they were used for. Rui Jin and Hong Lian immediately began to check through the items inside. It took them 2 whole days before they could sort through everything, and they really found quite a few materials for formations. The various items had been stacked into a small mountain behind them. "These materials are enough for us to cast killing formations. However, as we lack a few crucial materials, we can only replace them with other ones. This will work, but the formations won't be in their most powerful form," Rui Jin murmured to himself as he stared at the mountainous pile of items behind him. Afterward, Rui Jin and Hong Lian both went into seclusion. They took the huge pile of materials to create formations. As they possessed inherited memories, they understood every single step of the process extremely well. Jian Chen, Tai Ta, and He Yu had nothing to do. They spent the next period of time paying attention to the situation outside using the mirror Rui Jin had conjured, watching to ensure that they learned of any unexpected changes. Very soon, a month passed. Rui Jin and Hong Lian had spent the entire time constructing their formations. Afterward, they joined Jian Chen and the others in watching the situation outside, silently waiting for the saint's fruit to ripen. Unknowingly, the 5 of them had already spent 3 months in the miniature world. Rui Jin basically needed to replenish the world's energy once every month in order to maintain the world. Now, the saint's fruit had already increased from 7 colors to 8. The 9 leaves had also increased to 7 colors, and the light around it became even more dazzling. The area it enveloped increased once again as well. All of them knew that the saint's fruit was even closer to ripening when they saw this. It had already entered a crucial stage. Another 2 months went by very quickly. The saint's fruit now possessed 9 colors, purging the vile energies with its light. A paradise had appeared in the death nest, as if it was where immortals dwelled. Another month passed and the 9 leaves gained another color. As soon as they were 8-colored, an extremely bright light suddenly erupted. The 9 leaves and the fruit seemed to have become a miniature sun. They emitted a blinding light, illuminating the surroundings and enveloping the entire death nest with dreamlike colors. Vast strands of presences rapidly surged into the saint's fruit from the 9 leaves. At the same time, vast quantities of essence surged from the scarlet ground of the death nest, all gushing into the small tree. A layer of thick clouds silently formed above the saint's fruit. The clouds were at a very low altitude and radiated with a tremendous presence. An invisible pressure permeated the surroundings, causing the atmosphere to become suffocating. Chapter 1150, tribulation of the saint's fruit. The saint's fruit glowed with a magnificent light. The 9 colors seemed to represent all the color in the world. Strands of essence constantly surged into the tree of the saint's fruit from the ground that seemed to have been dyed scarlet by blood. They were first absorbed by the 9 leaves before gushing into the saint's fruit with an even purer essence. This essence allowed the fruit to glow even brighter, even more dazzling, and even more blinding. The energy within the saint's fruit rapidly increased. Its profound presence also became even stronger. This was due to the profound truths of the world, several times more powerful than what Saint Kings at great perfection had grasped. The dense fragrance radiated from the fruit. It was absorbed by the densely packed vengeful spirits in the surroundings, allowing them to consolidate their forms. All of them benefited from it. Rumble. Suddenly, muffled thunder reverberated across the sky. Streaks of thick lightning flashed through the dense, dark clouds. They seemed like dragons dancing wildly, and every flash would illuminate the world with bright light. The clouds sank even lower. This is a legendary tribulation. These tribulations had always been a legend in my dragon clan. No one has seen them even in ancient times. I originally thought that this was just something someone had made up. I didn't think it actually existed, Rui Jin immediately cried out as he watched through the mirror in the miniature world. In the legends of my Phoenix clan, the tribulations represent destruction. Anything that can cause them should not exist in this world, which is why the tribulation has occurred to destroy them. Legend has it that tribulations are extremely powerful. I just wonder if the saint's fruit can make it through this tribulation or not, Hong Lian added. She was extremely serious. No wonder it can let people reach Saint Emperor. It's so heaven-defying that it can cause tribulations. Mo Tianyan's abilities sure are great since he was able to plant such a heaven-defying thing. He Yu sighed in amazement. He felt more and more admiration for the human champion of the past. Boom! Suddenly, deafening thunder rang out. At that moment, the entire place became snow-white. A huge bolt of lightning, as thick as an elephant's foot, shot down in an extreme speed. When the lightning approached 1,000 meters above the fruit, a formation hidden in the space there suddenly appeared. The powerful bolt of lightning struck the formation and was actually unable to get through to the saint's fruit. While resisting a strike from the lightning, an additional mysterious energy appeared on the formation. It then poured the mysterious energy from the lightning into the fruit. Immediately, the fruit's glow surged into the sky. The truths of the world became even more intense, filling the entire death nest. The entire region was affected, causing an odd presence to flood the area. The spatial force and world force in the death nest was affected, beginning to pulse in an unstable fashion. This formation must have been cast down by Mo Tianyun. He intends to use it to assist the saint's fruit with surviving the tribulation. He made the appropriate arrangements back then, Rui Jin murmured as he stared at the formation in the sky. Boom! A second bolt of lightning shot down in a deafening fashion, targeting the saint's fruit again. However, it was blocked by the same formation just like before. It left behind a mysterious energy before silently vanishing. This mysterious energy was then poured into the saint's fruit. The mysterious energy originated from the supreme mysteries of the world. After absorbing the energy of the tribulation, the saint's fruit began to shine more and more. The energy hidden inside also became more and more powerful. It was rapidly growing and ripening under the assistance of the tribulation. As bolts of lightning constantly fell, the fruit absorbed more and more mysteries of the world. At that moment, it seemed to have become the sun. It shined with a blinding 9-colored light, turning the death nest into a dreamlike world. The 9-colored light was not limited to the death nest either. The light broke through the formation around the place, expanding into the outside world. It enveloped the region and even made the sun in the sky lose its glamour. The supreme mysteries of the world violently pulsed. They spread through the void, almost across the entire continent. At that moment, all the Saint Kings on the Tianyuan continent could feel the powerful pulsing of the mysteries of the world, which made all of them lose their composure. In the independent space that belonged to the Pure Heart Pavilion on the Tianyuan continent, the pavilion master, Wu Chenzi, currently sat with a white-clothed, burly, middle-aged man in a room. Changyang Hu, so many years have passed. Are you still unable to let go? If you can't sever your attachments with mortal affairs, how will you reach the utmost peak of great liberation? Changyang Hu, the mortal world is like a dream. You have only been living in dream before. You should now break free from this dream, the pavilion master sincerely spoke. She was filled with helplessness. Changyang Hu's gaze became rather lost, but it cleared up soon. He gently shook his head. No, the mortal world is not a dream. It is reality. I haven't been living in a dream before. I've been living in reality. Pavilion master, it's really difficult for me if you want to sever all attachments of mortal affairs and abandon kinship and friendship. Sigh. The pavilion master deeply exhaled. Just as she wanted to say something, her expression drastically changed. Her ordinary gaze immediately sharpened. She seemed to be able to see through space, to a distant area. She cried out, "What powerful pulsing of the mysteries of the world! This completely exceeds the great perfection of Saint King. Has another Saint Emperor appeared on the Tianyuan continent? Who is he?" The birth of a Saint Emperor mattered very much to the Tianyuan continent, so even the pavilion master struggled to remain calm with her mental fortitude. However, Wu Chenzi calmed down again. Surprise filled her eyes as she murmured, "It's actually not the birth of a Saint Emperor. Has the saint's fruit that has been recorded to only appear once every 40,000 years in the death nest emerged once again? Looks like a giant struggle is going to break out between the 10 protector clans again." Chapter 1151, A Struggle Between the Strong. 1. Every time the saint's fruit appears, a saint king will be able to reach Saint Emperor. Now that the saint's fruit has appeared, it looks like another Saint Emperor will appear on the Tianyuan continent. That's a blessing for the continent, Wu Chenzi murmured to herself before turning to Changyang Hu. She said, "Have some time to yourself for the next few days. I really do hope you can sever all mortal affairs and break free from the chains." With that, the pavilion master walked outside. A struggle filled Changyang Hu's eyes, but it would be replaced by confusion from time to time. He seemed to have no idea what he should do, becoming lost. He could not find the path he needed to walk. Suddenly, Changyang Hu looked toward Wu Chenzi, who was just about to leave through the door. He said, "Pavilion master, I want to visit home." "Changyang Hu, are you still worrying about the matters at your home?" The pavilion master stopped and said without turning back. "It's already been many years since I've last returned. I have no idea what the situation there is like right now, as well as my younger brother and sister's situation." A rare sliver of reminiscence filled Changyang Hu's eyes. "Your worries are unnecessary. The Changyang clan is currently as brilliant as the noon sun, and your younger brother has already become an expert that can shake the continent," the pavilion master gently sighed. "But I still want to go back. I want to see my mother," said Changyang Hu. After a momentary pause, the pavilion master said, "Go back. Return back to the mortal world and comprehend it. It might help you." Changyang Hu immediately set off from the Pure Heart Pavilion. The pavilion master did not directly send Changyang Hu to the Changyang clan through a space gate. She instead got him to travel by himself. She made him travel the huge distance to return back to the Jessen kingdom by himself. Just as Changyang Hu left, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man arrived before the pavilion master. He clasped his hands, "Pavilion master. The Jessen kingdom is very far away from here. Changyang Hu will definitely come across some difficulties along the way. Wu Exan, protect him in secret. Only interfere when his life is threatened," commanded the pavilion master. "Yes, pavilion master." Wu Exan suddenly disappeared with a sway of his body. He shot off in the direction that Changyang Hu had set off in with extremely great speed. The pavilion master returned to an extremely simple discussion hall. It had been filled with people long ago. They were all important figures of the pavilion. Pavilion Master, the saint's fruit that only appears once every 40,000 years has ripened. How should we respond? Do we take part in the fight for it? A gray-haired old man stood up and asked the pavilion master. Wuchenzi sat on an extremely old cushion. She calmly said, "We practice the Pure Heart Sutra of the Pure Heart Pavilion. We have to purify our heart from passions and desires so that we do not become entranced by foreign objects. We have never participated in the fight for the saint's fruit every single time it has appeared. At most, a few seniors went with some experts to study the mysteries of the death nest, so we will not be participating either this time." At the same time, a huge blade floated 3 meters above the ground in the forbidden grounds of the Tyrant's Blade School. It shined with a layer of brilliant light. A burly, middle-aged man in robes sat on the hilt of the blade. Strands of extremely pure energy leaked out of the blade, which were then absorbed by the middle-aged man like a whale taking in water. He was the founding ancestor of the Tyrant's Blade School, Gui Haidao. He was currently cultivating by absorbing the energy within the Emperor armament. Over 100 Emperor armaments had fused with the blade already. The energy gathered in there had reached an extremely terrifying level where even Saint Kings at great perfection found it difficult to control. They would suffer extremely severe backlashes as well. However, as the original owner of the Emperor armament, Gui Haidao could use the weapon like a third arm even though he was not at great perfection. He would not suffer any backlashes. Suddenly, Gui Haidao's eyes snapped open. 2 streaks of terrifying light shot from his eyes, piercing through empty space, shattering it. The light reduced it into chaos, and soon after, images of the death nest appeared clearly. The space distorted constantly, making it very difficult to make out the feature there. However, a bright, 9-colored light appeared. What is this? Gui Haidao's face changed. He struggled to keep his composure, and only after quite a while did he sigh in amazement. What a powerful formation and what heaven-defying methods. Who was the one responsible for this? Several figures flew over with lightning speed from the distance. Gui Haidao returned to how he was before, and the space in front of him had recovered as well. The people were the great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School. They knelt down politely outside the forbidden grounds and one of them courteously reported, "Ancestor, the saint's fruit that appears once every 40,000 years has ripened. May we have permission to proceed to the Death Cavern and retrieve the saint's fruit so the ancestor can return to Saint Emperor?" The saint's fruit? What's that? Gui Haidao became rather interested. He did not originate from the same age as Mo Tianyun, and he had only just returned to the Protector clan. He was obviously uncertain about what had happened in the past with Mo Tianyun. The great elders explained all the information regarding the saint's fruit in detail. However, when Gui Haidao heard that the fruit could allow people to reach Saint Emperor, he did not show any hint of joy at all. He remained extremely calm and said, "I have no need for the saint's fruit, but it might be rather useful for you. You can go." The great elders beamed with joy. With what was said, they could tell that their ancestor did not need the saint's fruit to reach Saint Emperor, which obviously made them extremely excited and joyous. The great elders all left the Tyrant's Blade School. With their departure, Gui Haidao left the forbidden grounds as well. He entered the library there, diligently reading through the records regarding Mo Tianyun and the Death Nest. At the same time, experts left the Changyang clan, the Moyuan clan, the Yangji sect, the Xinxiao sect, the Padian sect, the Yuan sect, the Heaven's Incense School and the Heartless School. They directly ripped open space gates to travel to the Death Nest. Other than them, the supreme experts of Mercenary City were mobilized as well. There was not just Tian Jian who was at the great perfection of Saint King. There were also the elderly people who had remained in seclusion and had only appeared during the invasion of the 100 races. They were approaching the end of their lives and wanted to use their final moments to obtain the saint's fruit and break through to Saint Emperor. A few ancient clans with lengthy legacies and a deep heritage possessed records of the saint's fruit as well. All the Saint Kings in their clans were mobilized as well. At that moment, the death nest became the center of attention for all the Saint Kings on the Tianyuan continent. This was because the powerful rippling of the mysteries of the world could undoubtedly allow people to reach Saint Emperor. Even a few Saint Kings who had no idea of the fruit's existence ripped open space gates and hurried over, wanting to understand just what was going on. Chapter 1152, A Struggle Between the Strong. 2. The only remaining Saint King of the Tsar family stood in a large courtyard as he stared into the distance within the city of God. Tsar Vaimo's face was filled with both doubt and surprise. Has someone on the Tianyuan continent broken through to Saint Emperor? No, that doesn't seem right. These mysteries of the world seem to be due to the birth of a Saint Emperor, but they are completely different from the records, Tsar Vaimos softly muttered. He seemed to think of something and his face changed abruptly. He cried out, I remember now. It's the saint's fruit. This is the saint's fruit that is recorded to only appear once every 40,000 years. It's said that the fruit can allow a Saint King to reach Saint Emperor. Tsar Vaimo's breathing suddenly became ragged. At this current date, it was very difficult to reach Saint Emperor. Many people were stuck at great perfection for their whole lives, unable to advance, which was why becoming a Saint Emperor was extremely tempting to all Saint Kings. It was enough for all the supreme experts who stood at the apex of the continent to fight with one another until they were all bloodied and battered. But, the next moment, Tsar Vaimo's face darkened. He became filled with sorrow and helplessness. He deeply sighed, it's a pity that Kaiyun. Otherwise, my Tsar family might have been able to try get the saint's fruit. Sigh, I sure do regret the past. I was wrong back then. At the same time, the Saint King ancestors of the Kara clan and Kazda clan all came out of seclusion in the other two capital cities of the Holy Empire. They looked in the direction of the death nest with glowing eyes and left hurriedly after handing over some matters. Simultaneously, Saint Kings departed from the Karl Empire and Felicity Empire as well, all heading toward the death nest. The death nest was located in an extremely desolate region where people would rarely appeared, yet it had become lively today, something that rarely occurred. As space gates ripped open, Saint Kings hurried over from all directions. At that moment, over 2/3 of all the Saint Kings on the Tianyuan continent had gathered outside the death nest. Only an extremely low number of people did not participate. Right now, the entire death nest was enveloped by a magnificent, 9-colored light. It dyed the surroundings with many colors as thunder boomed in the sky. The tribulation lighting fell bolt after bolt. The commotion was huge. The vast pressure caused many Saint Kings to change their expressions. What's happening? Why has this happened in the death nest? Has someone been cultivating in the death nest and reached Saint Emperor? Many Saint Kings discussed the matter with one another. All of them were curious. Only a few clans that possessed an ancient heritage and knew about the saint's fruit remained silent. They did not want to leak the secret of the fruit. Half a day later, the tribulation lightning in the sky dispersed. The saint's fruit had successfully made it through the tribulation with the help of the formation in the death nest, and it had absorbed a large quantity of pure energy from the lightning. It completed its final evolution and became the real thing. The saint's fruit had become simple now. Its multicolored light had completely disappeared, and all of its energy and vast amounts of essence had completely withdrawn. None of it leaked out, and it had returned to its simple form. Even the 9 leaves around it were the same. At the same time, some of the Saint Kings outside the death nest began to move. The first people were the 10 protector clans and a few ancient clans. They had charged into the death nest at almost the same time. They knew the secret in the depths of the death nest. Their ancestors had already probed into the matter regarding the saint's fruit many times, around a dozen. Their records described it very clearly, so everyone knew that right now was the perfect time to collect the fruit. Immediately, over 100 Saint Kings entered the death nest. With the people of the 10 protector clans leading them, they flew to the depths with an unstoppable force. They did not bother with the vengeful spirits that they came across along the way. Any powerful vengeful spirit that blocked their way would be struck with several, or even a dozen combined attacks from Saint Kings. They would collapse into mist in a single instance. There must be some heaven-defying treasure in the death nest. Let's all go in and take a look. That's right. Otherwise, how could it attract the people of the 10 protector clans? The death nest may be terrifying, but if so many saint kings like us work together, we can easily trample through this place. Many people revealed their thoughts outside the death nest. They had all realized something from the movements of the protector and ancient clans, so they all charged in as well. The death nest was terrifying with its extremely powerful Saint Emperor vengeful spirits, but basically 2/3 of the Tian Yuan continent's supreme power had gathered here. Even if they came across Saint Emperor vengeful spirits, they could disperse them easily, which was why every single person was filled with confidence. The Saint Kings had entered the death nest in 2 waves. The people of the first wave moved very quickly. They could almost be described as swift as the wind, using only 2 hours to reach the second zone of the death nest. They continued on without slowing down at all, proceeding to the third zone. All the wonders of the saint's fruit had already disappeared. It no longer radiated with any fragrances, but the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits did not disperse. They remained there like before, meditating. The vengeful spirits had benefited a ton after absorbing the fragrance of the saint's fruit. Their bodies were now even more consolidated. In the golden miniature world, Jian Chen, Tai Ta, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu sat on the ground as they stared unblinkingly through the mirror. They were all waiting for the moment the vengeful spirits would leave. At this moment, the group of Saint Kings that had entered the second zone were obstructed by over 10 vengeful spirits. Although they had wiped out the vengeful spirits in the blink of an eye, the powerful ripples of energy reached the third zone. A gleam of light flashed through Rui Jin's eyes in the miniature world. He seemed to sense something and immediately cut open his finger. With a drop of his blood, he cast a secret technique to create another mirror in the air. The blurriness of the mirror cleared up very quickly. A group of human experts who glowed with various colors appeared in the mirror, quickly flying toward the third zone. Shit, it's the people of the protector clans. They've come to the death nest as well. Jian Shen had seen the people of the protector clans before, so he recognized them with a single glance. His face immediately became ugly. Chapter 1153, A Struggle Between the Strong. 3. The protector clans have arrived sooner than I expected. The ripening of the saint's fruit caused too large of a disturbance. I just never thought they'd actually come so quickly, said Rui Jin. What do we do now? Do we get the people of the protector clans to fight with those vengeful spirits and get them to attract their attention? And once they obtain the saint's fruit, we steal it over in a crucial moment? Hong Lian inquired. All of them contemplated the situation. Stealing the saint's fruit from a group of vengeful spirits or a great party of saint kings would both be difficult. In terms of battle prowess, the Saint Kings that had charged in from outside were nowhere near as strong as the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. However, they could work together, and there were many of them who knew Saint-tier battle skills and various ancient secret techniques. They were not easy to deal with either. Rui Jin glanced at Jian Chen. He said, let's not steal the saint's fruit from the hands of the 10 protector clans. That might lead to a lot of people panicking and doing some impulsive things. After all, the saint's fruit is no ordinary item. It's the only shortcut to Saint Emperor, so is there anybody willing to let it be stolen from them? Jian Chen nodded slightly with that. Rui Jin was looking out for Jian Chen with what he suggested. Jian Chen was not just a single person. He needed to consider the people around him. The Changyang clan in Lore City, the Jessen Kingdom, and the Flame Mercenaries could not endure abuse from the protector clans and the ancient clans. Although these large organizations were usually disinclined to do things like that, the saint's fruit that could let people reach Saint Emperor was involved this time. The great temptation could easily drive people mad. Time was tight right now. They began to move as soon as they came up with a plan. A gate opened in the Golden World and Jian Chen, Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian all flew out. They flew over the heads of many vengeful spirits, quickly charging toward the saint's fruit. Tai Ta did not come out. In order to protect his identity, he was persuaded into the artifact space by Jian Chen within the miniature world. Their appearance immediately garnered the attention of all the vengeful spirits present. At that moment, all of them stopped meditating and stood up in unison. Without saying anything, they all charged at the four of them. Jian Chen, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu had made preparations long ago. Chaotic force filled every corner of Jian Chen's body, pushing the defenses of his chaotic body to the limit. As for the three others, they had drawn their origin energy treasures, ready to attack and defend. A devastating streak of light flickered by. Rui Jin's sword and He Yu's machete were swung out simultaneously, sending out a strand of powerful sword chi and blade chi toward the many vengeful spirits up ahead. A layer of white flames had coated Hong Lian's scorching god fire hairpin as she coordinated with Rui Jin and He Yu to wipe out the enemies at the front. As the three origin energy treasures struck out at the same time, the power was unimaginable. It could destroy space and annihilate everything. It collapsed the vengeful spirits that rushed forward at the front without any difficulty at all, reducing them into black mist. Under the power of the origin energy, the vengeful spirits quickly weakened. However, it was not enough to deal with them completely. Their bodies were quickly reconstructed, but the attacks had paved a path. They immediately used it to quickly approach the fruit. However, there were just far too many vengeful spirits that charged over from all directions. Over 500 vengeful spirits formed a wall to encircle them. They all struck out the same time as various attacks rained down on the small group, almost drowning them like a flood. Swinging her hand, 9 fire-red phoenix feathers flew out of Hong Lian's hand. The feathers expanded in the wind, rapidly growing larger before becoming 9 flying phoenixes over 100 meters long. Flames burned around them, causing the temperature to quickly skyrocket. The 9 phoenixes did not attack, and instead, they quickly flew about in a circle. They moved faster and faster before transforming into a fire-red barrier that surrounded the 4 of them. The barrier blocked the attacks from all the vengeful spirits. There were a few lacking materials for the phoenix's guard, so the full strength of the formation cannot be used. It can't last for very long, so let's move a little faster. We need to obtain the fruit as soon as possible, Hong Lian gruffly informed them. She then took control of the formation, quickly moving forward with it. Muffled sounds constantly rang out. They originated from all the attacks that rained down on the formation, causing the light screen created by the phoenixes to constantly tremble. The vengeful spirits blocked their way like a black mass, but Hong Lian slowly advanced by controlling the formation, traveling less than 1,000 meters in 5 whole minutes. Every single step for them could be described as arduous. Finally, the formation shattered with a loud sound. The vengeful spirits in the surroundings immediately appeared before Jian Chen and the others, charging toward them in a blanketing fashion. Rui Jin moved just in time. He threw out 18 dragon scales. Each scale had undergone a special refinement, so they were covered with inscriptions. The 18 scales levitated in the air, shining with a streak of light which intertwined with one another to protect their small group. Coming out this time, Rui Jin and Hong Lian had both made sufficient preparations. They had created many defensive formations and many killing formations, so even though they faced an extremely terrifying amount of vengeful spirits, they felt no fear. Tiny cracks appeared on the 18 scales after lasting for 5 minutes. They clearly could not last much longer anymore, yet the 4 of them had only advanced by 1,000 meters. We've only prepared a limited number of formations. We can't use them all, so we need to advance quicker. Jian Chen, you enter the artifact space first. We'll kill our way over together, Rui Jin spoke gruffly. Without any deliberation, Jian Chen pulled out the saint artifact and disappeared into it. The saint artifact was then placed in Rui Jin's bosom. The moment the 18 scales shattered, the 3 of them erupted with their peak strength. They stabbed through the obstructing spirits like a blade, charging forward with an unstoppable force. Along the way, the 3 of them resisted the many powerful attacks from the vengeful spirits. They would have become heavily injured long ago if it were not for the origin energy treasures on them. At the same time, all the Saint Kings led by the Protector clans had entered the third zone. Saint force of various attributes flickered around them, which made them seem like tiny lanterns from afar. They used their full strength to resist the vile energies present. As soon as they entered the third zone, their faces immediately changed. All their attention gathered in a single direction. The disturbance created by Rui Jin, Hong Lian, He Yu, and the vengeful spirits was just far too great. Even with such a great distance between them, they could still sense the violent ripples of energy. Shit, someone's gotten here before us. They've already started fighting with the vengeful spirits, a red-robed old man growled. He was a great elder from the Heaven's Incense School. The saint's fruit has only just ripened, and we arrived here in the shortest amount of time possible. How could they have made it here before us? A ruddy but sagely old man from the Shinshao sect wondered out loud. He frowned heavily. The people over there are extremely powerful, and they're no weaker than a few of us. They can actually fight so ferociously against the encirclement of vengeful spirits. This isn't something people at great perfection can do, Yi Yangzi of the Yuan sect said. The light in his eyes flickered. Perhaps it's a Saint Emperor? Surely it isn't the Path Lord of Carnal Desires, right? A Saint King from another Protector clan suggested. Chapter 1154, A Struggle Between the Strong. 4. The Saint Kings from the Protector and ancient clans immediately charged in the direction the battle had erupted. Almost all the vengeful spirits in the third zone of the Death Nest had gathered around the Saint's fruit, so there were very few vengeful spirits elsewhere. This allowed the party of Saint Kings to travel without problems. There was not a single vengeful spirit that blocked their way until they reached the edge of the battle. However, all of them became dumbfounded when they arrived. They all stared in front in astoundment as they experienced a great shock. In front of them, over 500 Saint Emperor vengeful spirits formed a black mass. They surged toward a location in a blanketing fashion, and all of them used various, powerful attacks. The attacks drowned the area, causing the ground to rumble. Dazzling, golden sword chi would shoot out from the encirclement of countless vengeful spirits from time to time. There would also be white flames between the spirits, radiating with a terrifying temperature. However, it was impossible to see the people trapped in the encirclement. Only a Saint Emperor can block the attacks from so many Saint Emperor vengeful spirits, but we only have a single human Saint Emperor, and it's clearly not him, so who are they? Are they the Saint Emperors from the Beast God continent? No, they're not Saint Emperors from the Beast God continent. Their presences are completely off. Does that mean that there's more than a single Saint Emperor on our continent? The people from the Protector clans and the ancient clans were all greatly shocked. In the current age, there were extremely few Saint Emperors. Even with the entire world in perspective, there was a countable amount of them, yet 2 Saint Emperors had just suddenly appeared here. This was an extremely astounding piece of news. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying ripple of energy erupted. All that could be seen was a huge, glimmering sword chi, a dazzling blade of light, and a burning, 3-meter-long hairpin break from the encirclement together. Wherever they passed, the vengeful spirits would collapse into dark mist. They had dispersed over 20 vengeful spirits instantly. A gap appeared in the encirclement of the vengeful spirits, and Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu immediately charged out. They continued to approach the saint's fruit, growing closer and closer. It's them. It's actually the dragon and the other magical beast that fought against the Path Lord of Carnal Desires and the Saint Emperors from the Beast God continent. Many people immediately recognized them, and they all spoke at once. They possess origin energy weapons that can injure Saint Emperors and origin energy armors that make it difficulty for Saint Emperors to harm them. They also own a wondrous bead that protects their soul. They're relying on these 3 treasures, which is why they can survive the encirclement of so many vengeful spirits, a Saint King from an ancient clan said in envy. If I had those 3 treasures, I could kill a path through the vengeful spirits as well, some people thought inside. They struggled to hide their envy. The saint's fruit. That's the saint's fruit. Suddenly, someone cried out from the crowd and everyone glanced over immediately. They discovered an ordinary, little tree standing all by itself on the scarlet ground. It had 9 leaves, and between the leaves hung a fist-sized fruit. It no longer glowed since it had returned to how it was before. It was simple, just like an ordinary piece of fruit. All the people gathered here originated from ancient organizations. The saint's fruit was recorded in great detail in the books at their clans, so they recognized it as soon as they saw it. All of their gazes began to burn with an urge. An extremely powerful desire to own it was ignited at the bottom of their hearts. The current world made it very difficult to reach Saint Emperor, while the fruit was the only shortcut to become a Saint Emperor. No one could resist such a great temptation. At this moment, no one paid any more attention to Rui Jin and the 2 others. The saint's fruit had drawn all of their attention, and the next moment, all the saint kings, regardless whether or not they were from the protector clans or the ancient clans, all charged toward the fruit as fast as they could with their eyes green with envy. Their movements immediately alerted a portion of the vengeful spirits around Rui Jin and the others. Close to 200 vengeful spirits immediately broke from the group, blocking the saint kings as black streaks of light. The 2 sides immediately began to fight, erupting into an intense battle. Over 100 human saint kings ferociously clashed with over 200 saint emperor vengeful spirits. All the saint kings wanted to break free from the vengeful spirits as soon as possible to retrieve the saint's fruit, so they used everything they had. Various powerful saint tier battle skills and ancient secret techniques were used unceasingly. Tremendous energy ripples shook up the surroundings, almost destroying everything. Storms of energy whistled around, causing the mist in the death nest to churn. The 2 sides were actually locked in a stalemate. The vengeful spirits were extremely powerful when they were still alive, but their strength had decreased now. At the same time, the human experts knew powerful saint-tier battle skills and ancient secret techniques. In a one-on-one situation, the saint kings could rival the vengeful spirits, unless a powerful existence like Gustis appeared. The pressure Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were under immediately decreased. They let out a breath of relief inside and secretly thanked the 10 protector clans. They thanked them for reducing the pressure they were under. At this moment, another group flew over from behind. They were the saint kings of the second wave. They did not possess ancient legacies, so they had no idea about the saint's fruit. However, since they could become saint kings, they were all intelligent people. They all knew that there was something inside that even the 10 protector clans would drool over. There's a small tree over there and there's a fruit on it. It's definitely an extremely valuable heavenly resource, the second group of people exclaimed when they saw the saint's fruit. The hearts of the people from the first wave sank. Shortly after the second group arrived, all of them in the first group quickly retreated, drawing the vengeful spirits back with them as they retreated to the second group. They pulled them into the battle as well. The vengeful spirits were no longer their opponent with the addition of the second group. They were suppressed by the joint attacks of the Saint Kings and many of the spirits collapsed. Over 200 more vengeful spirits broke away from the encirclement around Rui Jin and the others. They aggressively surged toward the group of Saint Kings. With this, the vengeful spirits around the 3 of them immediately dropped to under 200. This allowed the 3 of them to rejoice. With their strength, they paved a path and quickly approached the fruit. The saint's fruit is a treasure of us humans. Don't you dare take it, you outsiders. Yi Yangzi discovered what Rui Jin and the others were doing, and he immediately fell into a rage. He roared out and immediately abandoned the vengeful spirits he was fighting. He charged toward the 3 of them with a few other experts of the protector clans in an attempt to stop them. You overestimate yourselves if you want to stop me, Hong Lian coldly said in disdain. A great stream of burning white flames immediately shot from her hairpin, enveloping Yi Yangzi and the others. Yi Yangzi's face changed, and he immediately dodged. However, a Saint King at the 8th heavenly layer was a little too slow. The flames swept past his lower half and his legs began to burn. His flesh was burned to ash, but the terrifying white flames did not stop just there. Instead, it quickly spread to his upper half through his legs. Arg! The person shrieked out miserably. His lower half was disappearing bit by bit. The white flames contained unbelievable power. They could not be put out at all. This was the fire that came from the origin energy weapon. It was countless times stronger than what Hong Lian could control herself. Swish! With a flash, a Saint King firmly struck out. He split his companion in half along the waist, which prevented the terrifying outcome of the flame spreading to his upper body. What terrifying flames! This stunned many Saint Kings. Many of them became fearful of the flames. How can you foreigners lay your hands on a sacred item of the humans? At this very moment, an ancient voice boomed out from the battle between the Saint Kings and vengeful spirits. Four ruddy old men sat in the middle of the air as wisps of mist enshrouded them. They seemed like immortals. More than 10 Saint Kings covered them, blocking the attacks from the vengeful spirits. It's the people of the Shinshao sect. Looks like they're about to cast God's heavenly thunder. It's rumored that God's heavenly thunder is the supreme technique of the Shinshao sect. It can draw in the heavenly thunder that resides above the 9 heavens. A saint emperor was struck by it once, and he died on the spot. He was burnt to a crisp. A few Saint Kings from ancient clans could not help but cry out. Chapter 1155, A Struggle Between the Strong. 5. At this moment, the 4 great elders from the Shinshao sect became the center of attention. Many human experts watched them from the corner of their eyes as they fought with the vengeful spirits. The legendary god's heavenly thunder from the Shinshao sect was a powerful secret technique that had already approached the limits of the Saint tier and even exceeded other Saint tier battle skills. It had reached a whole different domain that was even more profound. The secret technique had rarely been used through history since using it was exhausting and would bring about a powerful backlash. It was almost a forbidden technique, but once it was used, the power could be described as devastating. The 4 great elders sat together in the air. They all formed seals with their hands as the wisps of mist around them surged into the sky. They used the mist to resonate with the world and summon a mysterious and powerful energy from beyond the heavens. Crack! Suddenly, a deafening boom exploded. A huge bolt of lightning descended from the sky, falling toward Hong Lian with unbelievable speed. There were no dark clouds. It was a bolt from the blue. The sound of thunder filled the air and reverberated across the sky. The bolt of lightning glowed with extremely bright light, illuminating the surroundings. At that moment, the bolt of lightning seemed to have become the only thing in the world. Its blinding light made the sun darken. Hong Lian raised her head toward the sky. A stern light flashed through her eyes as she murmured, "Quite some trick, but it's still not enough to injure me." She had already been locked on by the lightning, so she could not dodge. All she could do was receive it head-on. White flames roared around the scorching god-fire hairpin before it was thrown into the air by Hong Lian. Immediately, it morphed into a 10-meter-long hairpin from its original size, turning into a white streak of light as it shot toward the god's heavenly thunder with an unstoppable force. Boom! The hairpin collided with the bolt of lightning and an extremely clear boom erupted. Terrifying waves of sound caused the ground to gently tremble. Many Saint Kings were deafened. The bolt of lightning had actually been shattered. The huge bolt of lightning had been smashed into countless, smaller sparks that shot in all directions by the hairpin, so it seemed like the blooming of a beautiful flower in the sky. It actually created a rather special scene. What a powerful origin energy weapon. It actually destroyed the Shinshao sect's absolute technique without any difficulty. The Saint Kings that saw this broke into a hubbub. Many of them even revealed greed in their gazes. They had become interested in such a powerful origin energy artifact. If they obtained it, they would be invincible below Saint Emperors, and they would have the abilities to contend against Saint Emperors as well. The 4 great elders of the Shinshao sect all became rather ugly. Some paleness appeared on their faces. They remained silent, clenching their teeth to summon more bolts of lightning. Hong Lian did not give them the chance to continue. Roaring flames enveloped her as she shot toward the four of them with lightning-like speed, like the descent of a fire goddess. The saint kings that covered the four great elders all stepped forward. They sternly stared at Hong Lian and immediately struck out with a palm. Immediately, surging energy erupted toward Hong Lian with a great force. The scorching god fire hairpin immediately spat out a stream of terrifying white flames. The fire seemed to be able to melt everything in the world, and the energy sent out from over 10 saint kings was actually burned to a crisp by the fire. The flames had even spread along a sliver of their presence, tainting their arms. Their limbs immediately began to burn as their flesh slowly turned to ash. The saint kings all grunted. They could not put out the flames, so they all made a ruthless decision. They all severed their arms, which stopped the fire from spreading. Their severed arms were instantly burned to a crisp. There was no one obstructing Hong Lian now. They all feared the white flames since once it got to them, they would lose a layer of skin even if they didn't die. Hong Lian aggressively continued toward the four great elders. Their expressions drastically changed. Without bothering with anything else, they used their final secret techniques to escape. With a wave of her hand, the scorching god fire hairpin immediately trembled. 4 finger-sized sparks flew out, shooting toward the four great elders with lightning-like speed. Afterward, she collapsed 2 vengeful spirits that floated over in the surroundings using the hairpin again. Among the 4 great elders, one of them used a vengeful spirit beside him to block the spark. Another one was struck in the leg while the 2 others were struck in the chest. The white flames immediately began to flare up, burning from their chests and quickly spreading in all directions. The 3 great elders all wailed out painfully. One of them severed his leg without any hesitation while the heads of the other 2 exploded. They abandoned their bodies and their souls flew out. They quickly traveled toward the uninjured great elder before being sucked away into a gourd. Vast pressures descended from the sky. They brutally tried to crush Hong Lian, almost as if an invisible mountain was descending. Around a dozen saint kings in the surroundings had all begun to use saint-tier battle skills, targeting Hong Lian. Some were from protector clans while the others were ancestors of ancient clans. Hong Lian produced a clear phoenix's cry that was sent to the sky. The flames around her surged 10 meters high as several flame pillars as thick as an arm shot in all directions like scattered flowers. To no surprise, they targeted the saint kings who were using saint-tier battle skills. If one observed carefully, it was not difficult to see that every single pillar of fire contained a long, fire-red feather. The flames all originated from the feathers. The situation had completely developed into a battle between 3 parties. One side included Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian, another side included several hundred vengeful spirits, and the final side was the human saint kings. Hong Lian took on the attacks from many saint kings and vengeful spirits all by herself. She attracted the attention of all the saint kings. Many people from the protector clans and the ancient clans began to fight against Hong Lian. They feared her flames very much, but that did not mean they were afraid. The great elders from the Changyang clan became uncertain. They knew the connection between Jian Chen, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu, so they were hesitating about treating them as enemies or not. They could not allow outsiders to take the saint's fruit since it belonged to humans. At this moment, Rui Jin and He Yu finally approached the saint's fruit under the encirclement of so many vengeful spirits. The saint artifact hidden in Rui Jin's bosom immediately flew out, and with a golden flash, Jian Chen silently appeared. He used the illusory flash and arrived before the saint's fruit in a single motion. Chapter 1156, Aura San Jian Chen had already arrived in front of the saint's fruit. With a flip of his hand, a supreme quality jade box appeared, and without any hesitation, he extended it toward the saint's fruit. Jian Chen is a person of the Changyang clan. A member of the Changyang clan has already approached the fruit, everyone be careful. The Changyang clan is colluding with the foreigners. Many people discovered Jian Chen, who had already approached the fruit and was about to pick it. They immediately cried out in exasperation before attacking even harder. They did everything they could to finish off the vengeful spirits they were fighting so they could go and take the saint's fruit. The great elders of the Changyang clan had all rejoiced. Jian Chen's appearance had completely surprised them. They knew that Jian Chen was connected to Rui Jin and the others, but they never thought the relationship would be so deep, where the three of them were actually willing to help him obtain the fruit. Fantastic, this is fantastic. The saint's fruit belongs to our Changyang clan. Changyang Qing Juri was ecstatic. He seemed to have seen that a saint emperor would soon appear in the Changyang clan. The other great elders were the same. They showed no doubt in Jian Chen's abilities from their excitement. Jian Chen's actions pushed the battle to a climax. Everyone used 120% of their power so the fruit would not end up with someone else. They all traveled in the fruit's direction as they became blinded by greed. However, when the saint's fruit was about to fall into Jian Chen's jade box, another formation silently appeared. It formed a light screen around the fruit and protected it. A gleam of stern light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He immediately drew his emperor armament and began attacking the formation, but it was extremely powerful. He could not shake it even with his full strength. Both the humans and vengeful spirits had sustained great casualties. Several dozen Saint Kings had already become heavily injured, and 3 Saint Kings below the 3rd heavenly layer had already passed away. Their souls had been wiped out by the vengeful spirits and all the vitality within them had been sucked away. The vengeful spirits also suffered great casualties. Many vengeful spirits collapsed plenty of times, and over 10 of them had turned into a dense black mist, no longer able to reform. On the other side, Tianjian currently fought against Gustis with the 5 veterans of Mercenary City, who were at the end of their lives, and 2 Saint Kings at great perfection from the Protector clans. As the strongest Saint Emperor in ancient times, Gustis was terrifying even as a vengeful spirit. It took the combined force of 8 Saint Kings at great perfection to merely stop him, and they had even vaguely fallen to a disadvantage. The 5 veterans of Mercenary City and the 2 Saint Kings at great perfection from the Protector clans immediately began to panic when they saw that the Saint's fruit was about to be taken. This vengeful spirit is just too powerful. If we keep fighting like this, victory won't be determined even after 3 whole days and nights. We can't continue like this. Quickly use the final trump card to finish off these vengeful spirits and then take the Saint's fruit, a Saint King from a Protector clan yelled as he fought against Gustis. With a flip of his hand, a scorching ball of light appeared. A brutal, flaming hot presence of supreme yang permeated the surroundings. With a wave of his hand, he immediately threw the light in his hands toward Gustis like rain. Only then could the light be seen properly. It came from extremely tiny particles of sand, and each particle radiated with a burning golden light. The sand actually possessed the essence of the sun. As the sand touched Gustis, it appeared just like sparks landing in a vat of alcohol. Gustis actually caught fire and his rapidly weakened. Don't hold back everyone, or none of us will be getting the Saint's fruit. Use the Orus sand to deal with the vengeful spirits, someone called out from a group. He was a great elder from the Tyrant's Blade School. A few great elders from different Protector clans hesitated when they heard the cry, but they soon made up their minds. With a flip of their hand, a similar ball of burning light immediately appeared as well. The essence of pure, supreme yang appeared. A burning ball of light appeared in the hands of the ancestors from the ancient clans as well. They then reluctantly let it scatter into the vengeful spirits. The Orus sand was an item invented by past Saint Emperors specifically for dealing with the vengeful spirits. They used meteorites as a material, grinding them into the consistency of sand before placing it in a location extremely close to the sun. They were only created after being refined by the flames of the sun for 1,000 years, and every single particle of sand had absorbed 1,000 years' worth of the sun's flames. They were filled with the essence of the sun and were items of supreme yang. They just happened to be the bane of the vengeful spirits. Even the Protector clans possessed an extremely small amount of the Orus sand. They were their final trump cards to deal with the vengeful spirits, and they would never be used so easily unless they absolutely needed to use them. This was because the sand could not be refined easily. Only saint emperors possessed the ability to get close to the sun, and a powerful formation that could resist the impact of the sun's fire needed to be set up so that the sand could move with the sun. This was not something any old saint emperor could achieve. The ancient clans in possession of this sand were all powerful existences that once had saint emperors. Light scattered through the air, and the vengeful spirits immediately began to burn as soon as they came in contact with the light. The flames caused them to rapidly weaken. The human experts were originally in a disadvantageous position, but the situation changed as soon as the sand appeared. Instead, the vengeful spirits became suppressed. The vengeful spirits began to retreat in defeat. A few saint kings at great perfection abandoned their opponents and quickly flew toward the fruit. Gustis had been greatly weakened by the sand, and had retreated already. The 5 veterans from Mercenary City were free now, and they all looked at the fruit. Their eyes burned with a desire to own it, and they flew toward it in unison. Following them were the 2 other saint kings at great perfection who fought Gustis with them. Wait, Jianshen possesses a very deep connection with our Mercenary City, and his talent is extremely great. What you are doing will only ruin our relationship. Tianjian appeared before the 5 people from Mercenary City and obstructed them. The 5 old men did not waver because of this at all. One of them huskily replied, "Grand Elder, the 5 of us don't care about whatever connection you have with Jianshen. We only know that once we obtain the saint's fruit, one of us will be able to become a saint emperor and let Mercenary City become even more glorious." Chapter 1157, A Powerful Existence. 1. The 5 old men from Mercenary City charged at Jianshen in unison. Although Tianjian was the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, he was unable to stop them. The 5 of them possessed a special status in Mercenary City and were even older than Tianjian. They were his seniors, in other words. The situation of the vengeful spirits was disastrous. The Aurous sand posed too great of a threat to them. Once they came into contact with the sand, they would catch on fire immediately. They could not put out the flames at all, which caused their strength to rapidly weaken. Many vengeful spirits had retreated already, and some of them had even been beaten to the point where they could no longer recondense their bodies. They were greatly injured. Jianshen was completely panic-stricken in front the saint's fruit right now. It was surrounded by a powerful formation at level he could not break through. Ziying, Qingsuo, is there any way to break through this formation? Jianshen sought help from the sword spirits. Master, this is a closed formation. There is no way in or out, so the only method to get through it is by destroying it with supreme force, Qingsuo said in Jianshen's head. Beside him, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu fought as hard as they could. Not only did they block vengeful spirits, even some human saint kings had become their enemies. Spatial gravity. Suddenly, someone yelled out. A great elder from a protector clan used an ancient secret technique from far away, which caused the gravity around Rui Jin and the others to skyrocket. The 3 of them all slightly sank. At that moment, they felt like they had become over 1,000 times heavier, which had even caused the ground below them to sink. Even Jianshen was affected. A gleam of stern light flashed through Rui Jin's eyes. With a deep call, the sacred dragon's sword struck the space while glowing with a dazzling golden light. It caused the space there to violently shake, breaking through the ancient secret technique with supreme strength. As soon as the ancient secret technique was broken, a vast pressure descended from the sky again. There were saint kings casting saint-tier battle skills, and the number of them had reached over 30. Rui Jin flung out his hand and 18 palm-sized banners suddenly appeared. Every single banner shone with a hazy, golden light. Through the light, the banners could be seen covered in inscriptions and strands of powerful energy radiated from within. The 18 banners arranged themselves in the empty air and began to shine with a blinding light. The rays of light weaved together, actually forming a faint barrier of energy to protect them. The saint-tier battle skills were used at the same time. Over 30 tremendous ripples of energy erupted and the extremely powerful attacks landed on the golden barrier almost at the same time, causing the barrier to violently shake. The barrier was not destroyed, but over 20 vengeful spirits who were attacking it were reduced to dark mist by the Saint-tier battle skills. Swish! The golden light disappeared with a flash. Ruiji knew that Jian Chen could not break through the formation protecting the fruit, so he stabbed at the formation with his sword. The formation around the fruit violently shook, but it stabilized once again. Ruijin's attack, which was no weaker than a blow from a Saint Emperor, was actually not enough to break through it. "Let's break through this formation together," Yu growled. The origin energy weapon in his hand began to shine with a blinding white light as a mysterious and powerful origin energy coiled around the surface. Afterward, he struck the formation in unison with Ruijin. Ruijin and Yu were both extremely careful. Although the origin energy weapons possessed tremendous strength, they could control it. As they swung down, they did not target the fruit, but the formation around it. They were afraid that they would destroy the fruit with even the slightest carelessness. The formation protecting the fruit was far more powerful than they had imagined. It did not shatter after withstanding the joint attack, and instead, it just trembled even more heavily. Again. Yu roared out as a vast presence exploded from him. His clothes and long hair danced about despite the absence of wind, while the machete in his hand emitted an even more dazzling light. He struck the formation once again along with Ruijin's sword. This time, the formation finally shattered as it gave in. Without any hesitation, Jian Qin used the jade body to carefully collect the saint's fruit, before grabbing the 9 leaves as well. He stored the box away carefully. Jian Qin immediately exhaled a deep breath after he did all that. He gently rubbed his space ring as joy filled him inside. He had finally obtained the fruit as he had wished after so much effort. The barren, small tree quickly began to wither now that the fruit and 9 leaves had been removed. It shriveled up in the blink of an eye before disappearing into the earth. Boom! With a deafening rumble, the 18 small banners finally shattered from the violent attacks by the human Saint Kings and vengeful spirits. A great group of Saint Kings aggressively charged toward Jian Qin. "Hand over the saint's fruit," many Saint Kings roared. They all seemed to have been peeved by the fact that Jian Qin had taken the saint's fruit, all falling into a rage. They could no longer bother with anything else. The enticement of the saint's fruit was just far too great. It was so great that even ancient clans dared to offend protector clans to obtain it because this was their only chance to have a clan member become a saint emperor. Once they had broken through successfully, there would be no problems even if they had offended the protector clans, since they would then possess the ability to contend with the protector clans at that time. Chapter 1158, A Powerful Existence, 2. A devastating golden sword chi suddenly appeared. As a streak of light, it chopped through the air and traveled with an unstoppable force. The 100-meter-long sword chi enveloped all the human experts who were charging over, causing them to pale. At the same time, a huge silver blade of light shot through the air with lightning-like speed, chopping towards the human experts in another area. The surrounding temperature quickly rose as a terrifying waves of heat shot out. Roaring white flames suddenly leaped into existence, forming a terrifying wall of fire in the air. Countless experts were afraid of getting close to it. They all feared it. Ruijin, Honglian, and Yu attacked in unison. They faced enemies from all directions. With their origin energy weapons, they formed a tight defense, keeping countless Saint Kings at bay. Although the Saint Kings were not as powerful as the vengeful spirits, they possessed intelligence. They knew how to work with one another, and they knew many ancient secret techniques and Saint-tier battle skills. It was no easier to face them than the vengeful spirits. Faced up against Ruijin and Yu's attacks, all the Saint Kings immediately began to work together with a tacit understanding. They all sent their attacks at the sword chi and blade of light in unison. There were no Saint Emperors among the human experts, but attacks from several dozen Saint Kings, or even 100, were no weaker than one from a Saint Emperor. It even seemed to surpass the attack of a Saint Emperor. Even if Saint Emperors were present, all they could do was dodge. With two deafening booms, Rui Jin and He Yu's attacks from the Origin energy weapons were blocked by all the Saint Kings. The Origin energy weapons were powerful, but Saint Emperors could block them. The Saint Emperors would only become heavily injured if they were wounded by the Origin energy. The human experts' confidence grew after blocking Rui Jin and He Yu's attacks. The fear within them was reduced as they all rushed forward. However, no one dared to touch Hong Lian's wall of fire, all deterring around it. There were fewer and fewer vengeful spirits now. The Orus sand was very effective, bringing a radical change to the situation and killing off many vengeful spirits. It consumed all of the spirits' energy so that they could no longer recondense, reduced to a dense, dark mist in the death nest. Only after countless years would they be able to recondense. Of course, a small portion of vengeful spirits had run away and avoided the disaster. The vengeful spirits were invulnerable in the death nest. Hong Lian, release the killing formation. Rui Jin called out before immediately pulling out the formation he had prepared earlier. He tossed it out, and it activated in the air. Radiating with powerful ripples of energy, the space in a radius of 1,000 meters distorted. All the Saint Kings in the region disappeared, becoming trapped in the formation space. Hong Lian frowned and lamented, "We prepared these formations specifically for the vengeful spirits. We've changed many aspects and replaced them with methods to deal with the vengeful spirits. If we use it against these humans, the advantages of the killing formations will almost be non-existent. It won't be able to trap them for long." However, Hong Lian did not hesitate even though that was what she said. She threw out a killing formation and trapped over 30 Saint Kings in it. Close to 100 Saint Kings had been trapped by the two killing formations, greatly reducing the pressure they faced. He Yu possessed no formations. He killed his way into the groups of humans with his machete. As his blade fell, blood splashed everywhere. No one was He Yu's opponent except for the Saint Kings at great perfection, and even they were unwilling to take He Yu's attacks head-on. The Saint Kings were thrown into an utter mess by He Yu. As He Yu rampaged among them, it was very difficult for them to gather several dozen people to work together and use powerful attacks. Rui Jin looked back at Jian Chen and said, "These killing formations don't pose a great threat to the human experts. They'll break free very soon. Jian Chen, follow behind us. We'll kill our way out." Jian Chen sternly nodded. Their plan could only adapt to the changes. Originally, they had planned to get Tai Ta to take them out after they had obtained the fruit, but there were too many human experts here now. Jian Chen could only leave Tai Ta in the Saint Artifact to protect his identity. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu paved a path up ahead. They killed the Saint Kings that charged up while Jian Chen did not stand around either. He wielded the Emperor armament as he fought against 5 Saint Kings, 2 at the 7th heavenly layer and the rest at the 6th. The Saint Artifact hovered above his head, helping him block powerful attacks from time to time. The 4 of them had basically become public enemies in everyone's eyes. They received attacks from all directions, enduring constant barrages from various ancient secret techniques and Saint-tier battle skills. However, the attacks struggled to harm Rui Jin, Hong Lian, or He Yu since they were clad in Origin energy armor. The Saint Artifact also helped Jian Chen block 2 Saint-tier battle skills as they moved. Behind the groups of people, 5 old men sat together in the air, casting a secret technique. They then pointed at He Yu from afar and an extremely obscure ripple of energy expanded. It was very difficult to sense. He Yu's face suddenly changed as he fought. A trail of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he began to tremble a little. His face paled. "He Yu, what's wrong?" Rui Jin immediately asked when he sensed the abnormality of He Yu. He was filled with shock. "It's poison." Supreme experts that are well versed with poison have secretly poisoned me. They've actually planted it directly into my body. "What great skills," He Yu explained in a heavy voice. His face had already darkened while the blood at the corner of his lips had turned black. Surprised, Jian Chen immediately arrived beside He Yu. He used the Saint artifact to cover himself as he injected a strand of radiant Saint Force origin energy into He Yu. He Yu waved his hand and said, "It's not a problem. The poison's extremely powerful, but my body is no ordinary body. I can suppress it for a few days." Jian Chen also knew that right now was not the time to cure He Yu from his poison. He said, "Senior He Yu, when we leave here, I'll use the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force to completely cure you of the poison." Near the back of all the people, the 5 old men who had cast the poison stood up at the same time. One of them said to the 5 veterans from Mercenary City nearby, "We've already used the poison of Heaven's End to heavily injure one of them. It's about time you 5 get moving." The 5 old men from Mercenary City nodded. Without saying anything, they immediately stood in a pentagram formation. Immediately, 5 tremendous presences radiated from their bodies. They formed 5 pillars of energy which surged into the sky. The 5 old men had reached the great perfection of Saint King long ago. They had already arrived at the peak of their cultivation level. They were existences that were infinitesimally close to Saint Emperor and were extremely powerful. The 5 of them used an absolutely secret technique together. The commotion was so great that it alerted many people present, and they immediately glanced over. The Changyang clan and the Grand Elder of Mercenary City remained in the distance. They never took part in the fight for the fruit. Seeing what the 5 old men were doing, Tianjian gently sighed. He obviously knew what secret technique the 5 of them were using, but he was filled with helplessness since he could not go and stop them. At this moment, the presences of the 5 old men actually fused together. Their presences joined to become an even more terrifying presence where even their energy stacked together. It became a force that could even shake the world, causing many Saint Kings to tremble inside. "Saint Emperor, this is the overwhelming presence that only Saint Emperors can possess," some people exclaimed. The 5 old men had used a secret technique to pool their power together, actually reaching the power of a Saint Emperor. They had basically reached the level of a Saint Emperor through an alternate method, shocking many people present. The 5 old men were surrounded by a bright layer of white light as a tremendous, terrifying energy rippled in their surroundings. The 5 of them seemed to have come with the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. They seem to be using an extremely powerful ancient secret technique, and they need time to charge it up even with their strength that has reached the utmost peak, a Saint King from an ancient clan said. He was deeply shocked that Mercenary City actually hid such unknown experts. At this moment, tremendous amounts of energy quickly condensed above the 5 old men. In the end, it transformed into a figure completely condensed from energy. Its facial features were clear-cut, and it seemed alive. It seemed just like an immortal. Mo Tianyun, that's Mo Tianyun. It's the champion of the humans, Mo Tianyun. Just what is this powerful ancient secret technique? It can even condense Mo Tianyun's figure, countless people cried out in amazement. At this moment, the Saint Kings all struggled to keep their composure even with their mental fortitude. Mo Tianyun was just far too well known. Even after 1,000,000 years, Mo Tianyun remained a godlike figure in the hearts of a countless number of people. Not only was this because he was the savior of the human race, having repelled the invasion of the 100 races, but he was also a glorious legend among the humans. He was the only sovereign-like figure that had surpassed Saint Emperor as a human. Chapter 1159, A Powerful Existence, 3, Standing like an Immortal. The might from Mo Tianyun deeply shocked all the experts present. Under Mo Tianyun's tremendous presence, many Saint Kings had even lost the will to resist. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, He Yu, and Jian Chen were also alerted by the incomparable might, but they tried to break free. They all looked at Mo Tianyun's projection and became extremely stern. Mo Tianyun was projected by the 5 old men of Mercenary City using an absolutely secret technique. This was something that Mo Tianyun had left behind in the past, and it surpassed Saint Tier battle skills. However, the conditions for casting the technique were extremely arduous. Only Saint Emperors could use it. The 5 old men had only barely managed after fusing their strength using another secret technique. The secret technique was left behind specifically for Saint Emperors. There was no room for doubt over its power. Suddenly, Mo Tianyun's figure moved. He took a step forward and the entire place immediately shook. The casual step hid an unbelievable amount of power. At that moment, space seemed to freeze and time seemed to stop. The churning black mist in the death nest calmed down. Mo Tianyun seemed to become the only thing in the world. Then, the space beneath his foot immediately began to ripple in a terrifying fashion. This ripple spread toward Roy Jean and the others like a sword, moving extremely quick. All the Saint Kings stopped whatever they were doing. Their attention was involuntarily drawn to Mo Tianyun. His simple-looking step contained the truths of the world. It used the energy of the world. Roy Jean, He Yu, Hong Lian, and Jian Chen immediately felt like they were immobilized. They had been firmly trapped there by an invisible energy, only able to watch helplessly as the rippling space quickly approached them like a sharp sword. Suddenly, a powerful golden light appeared on Roy Jean. His body rapidly expanded and a layer of densely packed golden scales covered his body. He had assumed a half-dragon, half-human form, using his supreme strength to break free. Coupled with a roar that could shake the heavens, the sacred dragon's sword had shot forward as a golden streak of light. Fusing with his sword, he stabbed at the rippling space as hard as he could. The two silently collided and did not produce a great explosion. The space only violently shook, becoming blurry and distorted. Everyone's senses were affected. The rippling from Mo Tianyun's foot vanished. It had been blocked by Roy Jean, but Roy Jean suffered as well. He was launched back, landing 1,000 meters away in a horrible condition. The light from the origin energy armor on his body had dulled by noticeable amount. With a clear phoenix's cry, Hong Lian also forcefully broke free as fire flashed through the air. She turned into a huge divine phoenix, radiating with scorching white flames. She used the scorching god fire hairpin to attack Mo Tianyun's figure. Mo Tianyun remained expressionless. He was not the real Mo Tianyun. He was only the result of a secret technique, one that had surpassed Saint-tier battle skills. He extended a finger and endless amounts of world force immediately gathered from outside the death nest. The world force actually condensed into a 5-meter-long finger in a short moment, and that finger then shot toward the hairpin with an unstoppable force. Boom! With a violent rumble, the origin energy weapon was knocked away by Mo Tianyun's finger while the finger dispersed at the same time. Caw! An elated phoenix's cry rang out while Hong Lian used her clan treasure to protect herself. Endless amounts of white flames surged toward Mo Tianyun, enveloping him along with the 5 old men that were hiding within the secret technique. She wanted to burn all of them to ashes. Mo Tianyun's figure gradually dulled. His presence also rapidly weakened. He was not the real thing and only a secret technique. Once the technique ran out of energy, he would disperse. Saint force circulated within the 5 old men's bodies, temporarily protecting them from the flames. However, they had become much paler, and their faces were filled with exhaustion. Arg! The 5 old men called out at the same time. They poured their 3 vital energies into Mo Tianyun's figure, allowing him to consolidate once more. Under the control of their mind, Mo Tianyun smashed a palm firmly onto Hong Lian. Bang! With a muffled sound, Hong Lian's huge body was blown through the air with her white flames. She was launched far away by Mo Tianyun's palm strike. Roar! A deafening dragon's roar rang through the sky. The tremendous dragon aura had enveloped virtually all of the death nest. Roy Jean had completely assumed his original form, turning into a 100-meter-long golden divine dragon. His scales were lustrous and shined with a golden light. Mo Tianyun remained where he was without moving. He launched a palm strike at Roy Jean from 1,000 meters away. The strike suddenly became several hundred meters wide in the air as it fell toward him. It clenched the dragon tightly to its palm. Great dragon roars rang out time and time again. Clenched in Mo Tianyan's hand, Rui Jin was currently attacking as hard as he could, causing the palm to constantly shake. The 5 old men from Mercenary City all slightly trembled. They had already become pale white and exhaustion was spelled out on their faces. They needed to use their vital energies to cast the secret technique, and the longer they used THRM, the more vital energies would be consumed. They were already old men, so they could not last very long at all. He sure is worthy of being a king of the dragon. This golden divine dragon has yet to become a saint emperor, yet it already possesses such great battle prowess. It's not because our secret technique is not powerful enough but because the dragon has origin energy treasures. The 5 old men gruffly came to a conclusion. Every single one of them possessed an ugly complexion and one of them called out, "The golden divine dragon has already been trapped by us while one of the other 2 magical beasts has been hit by the poison of Heaven's End from the Heaven's Incense School. Only the divine phoenix is left. Everyone use your supreme secret techniques to keep her busy. The saint's fruit will belong to use without the 3 of them getting in the way." Many people became tempted. Other than the Changyang clan, the 1 or 2 experts from the other 8 protector clans and a few from the ancient clans all began casting their supreme secret techniques to trap Hong Lian. It was different from before since they were not offensive secret techniques but techniques to entrap. They all knew that Rui Jin and the others were protected by origin energy armors. No matter how powerful the attacks were, it would be difficult to injure them. The people from the Changyang clan did not interfere. As soon as they did anything, it would be equivalent to becoming everyone's enemy. "I'd like to see whether you have the ability to trap me," the phoenix said in human tongue. Her eyes had already become completely red as roaring flames leaped about them. "Jian Chen, enter the artifact space," He Yu commanded Jian Chen. His complexion had already become very dark as black blood flowed continuously from the corner of his mouth. The poison was much more potent than he had imagined. At this moment, the entire place began to shake. The entire death nest seemed to violently tremble, causing to everyone to lose their footing. Closely after the trembling, a swathe of extremely dense red mist appeared from the depths of the death nest. It seemed to be completely created from blood as the grudges of the dead and Yin Qi cowered away. It's baleful Yin force. It's actually the baleful Yin force of the Blood Sword sect. Impossible. How can there be baleful Yin force in the death nest? Chapter 1160, The Blood-Red Skeleton. A series of exclamations rang out. Disbelief flooded the faces of many people. The people from the 10 protector clans were affected in particular. They were all shocked inside. There were descriptive records of everything within the death nest in the 10 protector clans. All of the information originated from the countless times their ancestors had explored the land, and they had recorded everything about the place. However, the existence of baleful Yin force in the death nest had never been mentioned. There was only copious amounts of Yin Qi and grudges. The baleful Yin force is a special, secret technique of the Blood Sword sect. Does that mean there is an expert of the Blood Sword sect cultivating here? That's impossible. I've met experts of the Blood Sword sect before. It's impossible for their baleful Yin force to appear here, and the energy that has just appeared is countless times more powerful. What terrifying baleful Yin force! Even so far away, my soul is still affected. It feels like it's being siphoned away by the baleful Yin force. All the Saint King's expressions changed. They all stared at the extremely dense, blood-red mist in shock. The baleful Yin force did not approach them, but their souls were all affected anyway. This filled them all with deep shock. Tianjian also became extremely stern. He stared at the baleful Yin force in interest and gruffly said, "What powerful baleful Yin force! It's actually several hundred times more powerful than Houston's. How was it created? If it originates from a person, then that person's strength would be too terrifying. Jian Chen stared at the cloud of baleful yin force unblinkingly. He thought inside, is Uncle Xiao cultivating here? Has he already become a saint emperor? Bang! 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 Suddenly, muffled sounds reverberated from the depths of the death nest. The ground constantly trembled as a demonic, 100-meter-tall figure gradually emerged from the cloud of baleful yin force. All the Saint Kings became stunned when they saw the demonic figure's appearance. It was actually a 100-meter-tall skeleton. It was completely blood-red, as if it had bathed in blood. It stood in the baleful yin force and actually seemed to be a part of it. The baleful yin force is from this skeleton. Someone cried out from the crowd. With that, everyone immediately looked closer. Indeed, they discovered that the extremely dense baleful yin force was radiating from every single bone of the skeleton. The baleful yin force actually originated from the huge skeleton that had appeared out of nowhere. This made many people extremely surprised. The skeletons formed from countless bones of saint emperors. It's all from the experts that were buried here, another knowledgeable person cried out. What he said astounded every single saint king. How is this possible? How have the remains that Mo Tianyun buried all those years ago formed such a huge skeleton? Did someone do something to the death nest, which is why a huge skeleton has appeared here? The Saint Emperor ancestors of our 10 protector clans have searched the death nest many times in the past, but rarely did they ever come across the remains of Saint Emperors. Many of them had vanished, so they thought that Mo Tianyun had refined them through a huge formation. Looks like all the remains were hidden away instead. Who hid these remains? Was it Mo Tianyun? The ancestors of my clan were once confused about why Mo Tianyun created a place like this. It looks like Mo Tianyun did not just make this place for the saint's fruit. There's other secrets that we don't know about. Various discussions arose in the surroundings. The protector clans as well as some of the ancient clans knew many secrets regarding the death nest. All of them said whatever they knew. Coupled with a few conjectures from other people, all of them immediately thought of a lot of things. The appearance of the giant skeleton had temporarily attracted everyone's attention. They had stopped fighting while many of them focused on the skeleton. At this moment, the blood-red skeleton moved. It extended one of its bony arms and an endless amount of baleful yin force immediately radiated from its bare bones. As a dense, red mist, it rolled toward everyone. Before the mist had even approached them, all the Saint Kings felt like their heads were splitting open as a stabbing pain appeared in their souls. At that moment, all of them seemed to lose control of their souls. All their souls wanted to fly out of their heads and fly over to the baleful yin force. All the Saint Kings were extremely shocked. The baleful yin force was just too terrifying. Even with their powerful souls, they struggled to withstand it. All the Saint Kings dared not stay any longer. They all retreated quickly as if they had seen a ghost. They all became filled with dread because of the baleful yin force. Jian Chen's soul was affected just like the other Saint Kings, but two powerful lights of violet and azure erupted in his sea of consciousness soon afterward. The sword spirits used their own strength to protect Jian Chen's soul. A bead appeared above Hong Lian and He Yu. It lit up with a hazy glow which protected their souls, allowing them to remain unaffected by the baleful yin force. The 5 old men from Mercenary City also stopped casting their secret technique. They quickly retreated like everyone. They were exhausted, so they avoided the advancing baleful yin force. It's a pity that using that secret technique consumes far too much energy. We don't have anything left to try other things with it, or we could try destroying that skeleton with the technique. One of them became dejected within. He felt rather helpless and regretful. Mo Tianyun's figure vanished after it lost their support, and Rui Jin recovered his freedom. A golden light flickered on him as he loudly roared at the sky. The roar was filled with anger, but just when he wanted to charge at the 5 old men, his face suddenly hardened. He also discovered the change in the situation. Rui Jin, let's leave here quickly. That skeleton is very troublesome, Hong Lian's voice rang in Rui Jin's head. Hong Lian had assumed a human form already. Chapter 1161, An Existence Beyond Saint Emperor. The clouds of baleful force quickly rolled toward everyone. They reached where they were standing very soon. Roy Jin had just broken free, so he had not started to run. The baleful force was extremely close to him already, less than 100 meters away, and the distance was rapidly decreasing. Roy Jin's face abruptly changed. The baleful force had yet to enter his soul, but his soul was already feeling a violent, stabbing pain. He also felt extremely dizzy. The baleful force was so powerful that even Roy Jin struggled to endure it. Roy Jin became extremely stern. He was filled with shock. As a golden divine dragon, he was the king of dragons. He possessed a natural advantage of an extremely powerful body and soul. The baleful force had not even reached him, yet it was already affecting his soul this much. He found this difficult to accept. The origin energy bead appeared above his head and shined with a hazy light, coating his body. It protected his soul, and with its assistance, the discomfort of his soul was immediately purged. The bead was a treasure that could block all attacks targeting the soul. The baleful force was powerful, but clearly it was not enough to break through the treasure's defenses. Roy Jin's eyes flickered with a golden light. He stared at the huge skeleton hidden within the baleful force before quickly arriving in front of Jian Chen. He stood with Hong Lian and He Yu. "What's up with this skeleton?" Roy Jin gruffly asked. He had been trapped in Mo Tianyan's hand earlier, isolating him from the outside world. As a result, he had no idea what had just happened. It appeared suddenly. "No one knows why, but it's an enemy," Hong Lian explained in a heavy voice. "The baleful force is very terrifying. No one among the humans can withstand it. If they get caught in it, they'll die for sure. We better leave here quickly before anyone notices." "I suddenly feel like the death nest is much more complicated than it seems," He Yu said with a frown. He was stern. All the human saint kings were rapidly retreating. They avoided the baleful force. The horror of the baleful force had scared many people witless, and only a few of them were still thinking about the saint's fruit. "Xianger, we can't stay here. Let's leave quickly." Changyang Qingyun suddenly appeared by Jian Chen's side and warmly spoke in concern. Jian Chen frowned slightly as a sliver of undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes. He did not pay any attention to Changyang Qingyun, directly ignoring him. Changyang Qingyun had used the time when he was removing Huang Wan's ancient secret technique to plant another one of his own. His actions made Jian Chen extremely furious inside, and he had already begun to treat Changyang Qingyun as an enemy. "Let's go." Roy Jin growled before grabbing Jian Chen's arm and retreating to the outskirts. The baleful force spread very quickly, but it was still slower than the speed at which the Saint Kings could fly. With their retreat, they immediately pulled far away from the baleful force. They were just about to leave the third zone of the death nest. At this moment, the blood-red skeleton roared at the sky. There was no sound, but a visible ripple expanded into the surroundings. Every single bone on its body churned with endless amounts of baleful force, actually causing the mist to clump together. It seemed to have become a sea of blood. Copious amounts of baleful force surged into the ground, causing the blood-red soil to become even brighter. At the same time, the ground began to shine with a faint, red glow. The third layer of formations in the death nest was originally only used to separate the vile energies between the two zones. It could not obstruct the entry and exit of people, but it was suddenly activated at that moment. It formed a layer of red mist that surrounded the third zone, preventing any human experts from leaving. How is this possible? The skeleton can actually control the formations here. Weren't they cast down by Mo Tianyun all those years ago? How can it control them at will? Looks like this skeleton has already developed a basic form of intelligence. It is much more complex than it seems. It's using baleful force to activate these formations, Or maybe using the formations to allow the baleful Yin force to gain another wondrous effect. We can't leave. Everyone worked together to smash the formation together. Many Saint Kings immediately launched powerful attacks at the formation. However, it had been cast down by Mo Tianyun all those years ago. Even after countless years, it remained as powerful as before. It was not something a group of Saint Kings could smash through, so the formation did not even budge no matter how hard they struck it. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu struck out as well. They used their origin energy treasures to attack the formation in unison, but their attacks only made it shake. It was not enough to break through. The ground shook constantly as the skeleton approached them all, step by step. Its feet were like mountains, and every time a foot fell, the ground would violently shake. The dense baleful Yin force would roll over from in front, getting nearer and nearer to all of them. All the humans fell into a panic. The baleful Yin force was basically the Grim Reaper's scythe to them. It could ignore any Saint Force defenses and injure the souls of people. Even though many of them knew ancient secret techniques, they possessed no methods of dealing with the baleful Yin force. Are we all really going to die today? Someone wailed. He could already taste regret. God damn it, how did this skeleton appear here? Why has it never appeared in countless years, and why does it have to suddenly appear in this age when there is a lack of Saint Emperors? Some experts of the Protector clans were confused and filled with questions. The appearance of the skeleton had become a mystery to all of them. Jian Chen also became unprecedentedly grim. He stared at the blood-red mist up ahead and said, "These people can't all die here. The Tianyuan continent cannot sustain a loss like this. Seniors, are you able to destroy this skeleton? The baleful Yin force does not affect us, so we can try," said Rui Jin. Afterward, he went up with Hong Lian and He Yu to fight the skeleton together. But the power of the skeleton was far beyond anyone's expectations. The three of them attacked the skeleton using their origin energy weapons, but all that was left behind was a shallow mark. The attacks that were powerful enough to harm Saint Emperors could not even break one of the skeleton's bones. At this moment, a red light flashed by. A huge bone club had appeared in the skeleton's hands at some point, sweeping toward Rui Jin and the others. Bang! 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 With three muffled sounds, the three of them were blown away by the skeleton's swing. Their origin energy armor had dulled as well. All the experts present became utterly stunned by what had just happened. All of their mouths hung agape as disbelief flooded their faces. They understood the three magical beasts' strength extremely well. They possessed the power to rival Saint Emperors, yet they could not even withstand a single blow from the skeleton. It's beyond a Saint Emperor. The skeleton already possesses strength at the level of the four champions from ancient times, a great elder of a Protector clan cried out. His voice trembled as horror filled him. With that, everyone paled. Despair filled all of their eyes. Chapter 1162, A Mysterious Expert. 1. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu returned to Jian Chen's side with sunken faces. Their expressions were rather pale. Although they had been protected by their origin energy armor, the blood-red skeleton was just far too powerful, so they had still suffered some light injuries. This skeleton possesses a strength beyond Saint Emperor. Even the three of us cannot stop it. If we end up in a long battle with it, we'll end up heavily injured, Rui Jin said in a heavy tone of voice. All the Saint Kings heard what Rui Jin had said, and they all became extremely grim. They all knew that the trio were Saint Kings at great perfection, but their real strength belonged to the level of a Saint Emperor. They were the most powerful present, so if they could not deal with the skeleton, no one could. Beyond Saint Emperor. Beyond Saint Emperor. Legend has it that the strength beyond Saint Emperor belongs to a whole different level. The difference that exists between it and Saint Emperor is as wide as a chasm. It's completely impossible to make up for, because it's power that belongs to a different level, a great elder of a Protector clan said with a trembling voice. Death and despair filled his eyes. Saint Emperors were like ants before those who had surpassed Saint Emperor, let alone them who were nowhere near Saint Emperor. The way out has already been sealed up by this skeleton. We're all going to die here today. My clan still needs my protection. Without us, my enemy clans definitely won't let them off. Looks like my clan will be in for a disaster. It doesn't matter if I die. What does matter is that the Tianyuan continent still requires our protection, or we won't have enough power to fend off the invasions of the Beast God continent and 100 races. Everyone sighed in despair. Many of them were filled with an unwillingness to just die here like this. During this period of time, Jian Chen had also let out the white tiger, but to his dismay, the tiger's ability to ignore formations and barriers were completely useful here. It could no longer pass through them like before. At this moment, Jian Chen thought of what Tai Ta had said in the past. His mysteries of war could break through the limitations of space, so he hesitated to try out Tai Ta's method or not, to see if his mysteries of war could take them all out. Just as Jian Chen wanted to release Tai Ta, the entire death nest shook violently. With a great boom, the formation around the third zone shook violently, vaguely showing signs of shattering. Afterward, a second and third boom rang out close after each other. They caused the formation to shake more and more violently. Then it actually cracked open to everyone's disbelief. A 10-meter-wide crack appeared. At this moment, the baleful force was already less than 1,000 meters away from them. Once they were caught by the blood-red mist, even they, Saint Kings, would not be able to survive, as it was countless times more terrifying than what Houston could control. Run! Someone roared from the crowd, and the mighty Saint Kings all fled outside as fast as they could. At this moment, the only thing they all thought about was fleeing. They never bothered to consider how the crack had appeared. The blood-red skeleton became utterly enraged and roared angrily. It quickly charged after all the people as it swung its bone club. The moment the club fell, it became several thousand meters long, smashing the Saint King at the very back to pieces. Even his soul failed to escape, shaken to parts by the terrifying force. The skeleton swung its club again. The scarlet bone became enveloped by a dense layer of baleful force and fell with lightning speed. It loomed over around a dozen Saint Kings. Suddenly, a resplendent streak of light appeared. It illuminated the space and purged the endless amounts of qi and grudges of the dead in the death nest. It shot over with unbelievable speed. It was an extremely terrifying blade of light, shaped like a crescent moon. It shined with blinding light, and it seemed to break through the limitations of space. It was still very far away, but the next moment, it had already swept over the heads of all the Saint Kings with sharp blade qi. It struck the bone club with an unstoppable, domineering force. Boom! As soon as the blade of light clashed with the bone club, a deafening boom erupted. Powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc within the death nest as terrifying storms caused all the Saint Kings to stumble and lose their balance. The club had been blocked by the blade of light, saving the lives of over 10 Saint Kings. The skeleton also stumbled a few steps back as its body shook. A terrifying crack had appeared on the huge bone club in its hands. All the Saint Kings had left the third zone by now. They arrived in the second zone, but none of them continued on. Instead, they could not help but stop and stare in the direction of the skeleton and blade of light in shock. Who was it who secretly attacked? He can actually deal such a powerful attack to deal with the frightening skeleton. If I've seen correctly, that flash of white light before was a huge blade of light. Who was the one responsible for that? This is a power that surpasses Saint Emperor. The senior who delivered that blade of light before must have stepped into that supreme domain. Impossible. Does that mean that there are still experts like that among us humans? That's definitely impossible. There were the 4 champions during the ancient times, but a 5th one has never appeared on our continent. Was it a sovereign-like figure of the Arctic ice goddess Hall who secretly interfered? Yes, it must be someone from the mysterious ice goddess Hall. They may have never interfered with the matters of the continent, but they must have been unwilling to see so many experts of the Tianyuan continent die here. I don't believe it's the Ice Goddess Hall. They don't have a sovereign-like existence. It must be the Sea Goddess who's done it, as she's the only one still alive out of the 4 ancient champions. A hubbub broke out among the people. Someone who had surpassed Saint Emperor had actually helped them out in secret when they were utterly doomed. This was an inspiring piece of information, filling everyone with emotion. It offered a path of escape to all of them, giving them new hope. The blood-red skeleton became even more angered. Baleful force churned violently and was endlessly poured into the ground. Immediately, streaks of blinding, red light radiated from the ground. They crisscrossed and wove together. It was actually a formation hidden beneath the ground which had been activated by the skeleton's baleful force, allowing it to appear. The formation was activated and the endless amounts of vile energies in the 3rd zone seemed to be affected. They all began to bubble violently in the air and, under everyone's disbelief, the Yin Qi fused with the grudges formed a cloud of blood-red baleful force. I finally understand. The baleful force must have been created from the fusion between the 2 vile energies. Everything's due to the formation under the ground. The 2 energies only fuse when the formation is activated. The death nest was created by Mo Tianyun all those years ago. Does that mean he left behind the formation in the ground as well? Why did he do something like that? Many people reached a conclusion, but they soon became even more confused. They all felt curious as to why Mo Tianyun had created a place like this. The saint's fruit definitely was not the main reason. Perhaps it was only a pretense. The 2 energies fused together and formed even more baleful force. The fusion had virtually drained all the vile energies in the 3rd zone with only a cloud of blood-red mist churning about. Soon afterward, the baleful force formed a huge, terrifying, and ferocious ghost's face that charged toward all of the Saint Kings with brandished claws and teeth. With a flash of blinding light, the resplendent blade of light appeared once again. Filled with a domineering force, it flew over from the 1st zone and struck the dense cloud of baleful force. The collision of the 2 actually knocked back the mist that all the Saint Kings feared. The blade of light continued on without weakening at all, slicing through the mist and landing on the skeleton. Boom! With a deafening sound, a slash that was several dozen meters in length appeared on the skeleton. Some of its tough bones had been cleaved in half by the attack as it stumbled backward with its huge body. It only managed to stabilize itself after taking around a dozen steps back. The Saint Kings in the 2nd zone all became stunned. Just a long-ranged blade of light was enough to force back the skeleton that had surpassed Saint Emperor. Just how powerful was that person? An existence like that had exceeded everyone's imagination. Some of them even refused to believe that there was such a terrifying expert hiding in the world. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all became shocked as well. They could obviously feel how terrifying the blade of light was. Even with their origin energy weapons, they could not deal attacks on that level. He's truly surpassed Saint Emperor. I wonder who he is, Rui Jin gruffly said. Chapter 1163, A Mysteries Expert, 2. The blood-red skeleton that had frightened countless Saint Kings in the death nest was blocked by a mysterious expert. Although this expert never revealed himself, everyone knew just how terrifying he was. He was able to stop the skeleton that possessed strength beyond Saint Emperor from afar without even appearing. The skeleton was extremely angry. The dense baleful force around it violently churned, surging out time and time again. However, it was forced back by a blade of light that even the skeleton itself could not block. More and more cracks appeared on its body and a few bones were even broken. A few resplendent blades of light swept past and forced the surrounding Yin Qi and grudges of the dead to the sides. Slivers of domineering and terrifying blade Qi remained there, actually causing the path paved between the vile energies to remain temporarily. Many people moved at this moment. Many Saint Kings had already begun traveling in the direction the blades of light originated from, wanting to see just who the mysterious expert was. Their movement immediately spurred on everyone else present. They immediately shot off in the same direction with lightning speed. The identity of this mysterious expert weighed on many people's minds. Jian Chen and the others were not exceptions either. They all followed the group in the direction of the blades of light. They passed through the second zone with lightning-like speed and arrived in the first. As soon as they made it there, everyone immediately jumped. A suffocatingly powerful blade chi filled the entire space. The blade chi seemed to have infected the air, making the air there feel sharp. A blinding white light stood over 10 kilometers in front of them. It was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire first zone of the death nest. It was endless amounts of blade chi. The white light was completely formed from mighty blade chi, and looking closely, it was not difficult to discover that the light seemed like a huge blade. It was 100 meters tall. "It's a bald," someone murmured in amazement. In that moment, everyone focused their attention on the blade. It was just a pity that the blade was covered by blade chi, so it was blurry and unclear. The great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School stared at the blade's figure without blinking at all. A gleam of light flashed through their eyes as doubt and surprise crossed their faces. At this moment, the blade chi that filled the entire first zone quickly weakened. The white light also quickly darkened, and in just a few seconds, the figure of the giant blade suddenly disappeared. It returned peace to the death nest. What's up with this blade? Was it secretly controlled by a sovereign-like figure? Or was it all because of formations? In my opinion, it's extremely likely that this was from formations. It's definitely what Mo Tianyun left behind all those years ago. A few Saint Kings immediately began making guesses. Some people believed that there was a great person secretly behind the blade, while others were certain it came from a formation, something Mo Tianyun had set up all those years ago. The ground began to shake. The blood-red skeleton had passed through the formation and was pursuing them. The blood-red mist around it surged into the sky, and the baleful force it radiated was even denser than before. The Saint Kings no longer dared to stay any longer now that the blade had disappeared. They left as quickly as they could. As soon as Jian Chen's group flew out of the death nest, Rui Jin began constructing a space gate. However, as soon as it formed, several terrifying attacks flew in from all directions, shattering the gate. "Hand over the saint's fruit, or you won't be leaving here," a great elder from a protector clan called out. His presence quickly skyrocketed. He seemed like a whole different person when he fled earlier. Without the threat of the blood-red skeleton, everyone focused their attention of the saint's fruit again. Over 200 Saint Kings surrounded Jian Chen and the others. The atmosphere became utterly nerve-wracking. The great elders of the Changyang clan stood to one side with ugly expressions. They were extremely worried, but they did not stand up and help Jian Chen. "World of feathers." Suddenly, Hong Lian cried out. The armor on her began to disassemble once more, turning into countless phoenix feathers to form a huge cage around them. Every single feather burned with intense white flames, preventing the Saint Kings from approaching them. "If you want the saint's fruit, then use everything you have," a Saint King cried out. Many Saint Kings stepped forward and used various Saint-tier battle skills and powerful ancient secret techniques to barrage the world of feathers. The temperature within the feathers was extremely hot as well, even the space distorted slightly. Hong Lian did everything she could to maintain the defense as she said, "Rui Jin, quickly create a space gate. The battle skills and secret techniques these people know are too powerful. They're not much weaker than the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits, so I can't last too long. The space in here is affected by the flames. It's become very unstable, so creating a space gate will be rather difficult." "I'll try my best," said Rui Jin before swinging his hand. The space in front of him immediately split open, but the space gate did not form as quickly this time. Rui Jin's arm was extended in the crack. The profound truths of the world were present on his hand. He was using a Saint King's ability to create space gates. Outside the feathers, 100-meter-long hand suddenly fell from the sky. With a deafening boom, the hand viciously struck the feathers, causing them all to tremble violently. Chapter 1164. The human Saint Emperor appears. The sudden hand stunned all the Saint Kings who were attacking the feathers. They all raised their heads in doubt and surprise. The palm strike was extremely powerful. It was on par to an attack from Gusties, but more importantly, many Saint Kings felt an extremely powerful ripple of the mysteries of the world within it. It was at a level Saint Kings could not achieve. It's a Saint Emperor. There's a Saint Emperor who's joined us, an ancestor of an ancient clan growled. His complexion was rather horrible. He still had a sliver of a chance at obtaining the Saint's fruit when he contended against the Protector clans, but he had no chance at all once a Saint Emperor interfered. It's him, the Path Lord of the Carnal Desires. He's interested in the Saint's fruit as well, a Saint King cried out. He stared at the sky with much interest. In the empty sky, a white-robed, middle-aged man had already appeared as some certain time. He levitated in the air like a normal person and looked down on everything. An ill paleness was present on his evil-looking face. He was indeed the Path Lord of the Carnal Desires. Although he had appeared under an extremely low profile, he made people feel like he controlled the world as he hovered in the sky. Hong Lian's face changed within the feathers. She heavily said, "The human Saint Emperor's come. If he works with the human Saint Kings, the feathers will be broken through in an even shorter amount of time." Rui Jin said nothing. He was very stern, putting everything he had into creating a space gate, but the space within the feathers had become very unstable due to the terrifying heat. The Path Lord stared sharply at the huge ball of fire constructed from countless phoenix feathers. Afterward, he slowly raised his hand and the surrounding energy of the world immediately began to move violently. Endless amounts of world force condensed in his hand at an unbelievable rate. Fusion of the 7 emotions, palm of severance. The Path Lord said with an extremely ordinary voice. He shot it down with that. Immediately, the vast amounts of world force condensed in his hand surged forward. It formed an invisible palm, flying toward the world of feathers with tremendous force. The surrounding energy was quickly absorbed as it flew, merging into the invisible palm and making it even more powerful. Not only was the palm a full-powered attack from a Saint Emperor, it contained the path of carnal desires from the Path Lord. The strike collided against the feathers, but it did not manage to destroy the defense. The surging energy and world force dissipated, but an invisible ripple passed through the feathers and entered the space inside. This was the path of desires created by the Path Lord. It was not just a simple energy attack, but a special method to injure the souls. Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian were all protected by their beads, so they did not fear the Path Lord's method of attacks. Heiyu hovered above Jian Chen, using the hazy light to block the attack for Jian Chen. However, the space within the feathers was impacted by the attack, causing the space itself to violently shook. In other times, the shaking space would not have affected them at all, but Rui Jin was currently constructing a space gate. What they feared most was unstable space. Just as the space gate was about to be completed, it suddenly collapsed and reduced Rui Jin's efforts to nothing. God damn it, that bastard's actually come to make trouble right now. Once I break through to Class 9, he'll be the first one I kill. Rui Jin became enraged. Killing intent bubbled around him as he became ready to kill. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires' palm strike had locked them out of the thought of leaving easily. A gleam of light immediately flashed through the eyes of the Path Lord when he saw that his palm strike actually failed to achieve the intended results. He murmured, "They sure are worthy of being origin energy treasures. They're actually so powerful, but maintaining the defenses must drain you heavily. I'd like to see just how long you can last. The Saint's fruit will be mine today. Probably only it can cure me of my wounds." With that, the Path Lord continued to attack the barrier of feathers. Every single strike of his possessed extremely great might and would cause an earth-shaking commotion. Just by himself, he basically controlled all the world force in the radius of several tens of kilometers. He could use it all to deal devastating attacks with just a raise of his hand. The space within the feathers was reduced to utter chaos from the Path Lord's continuous attacks. Even with Roy Jin's strength, he could not construct a space gate. This can't continue. I've expanded too much energy. Roy Jin, hey you two pave a path of blood. We'll make them pay with blood this time. Hong Lian ground her teeth with a pale white face. Cold killing intent had appeared in her eyes. Although the three of them had heavily injured a few human experts in the death nest before, they had held back and did not slaughter them. However, the bitter resistance had already ignited her killing intent. Hong Lian, work with He Yu to take Jian Chen away. I'll go test out the human Saint Emperor, Roy Jin heavily said. His irritation for the Path Lord had reached a point of resentment as well. Hong Lian nodded before looking toward He Yu. She asked in concern, He Yu, can you endure it? He Yu's situation had clearly worsened. Not only did his face turn place, even his arms has blackened. Blood flowed constantly from the corner of his lips. This poison sure is powerful. It's probably much more terrifying than the poison that's ranked first in the world, but I'm still a Saint King at great perfection. Poisoning me to death isn't that easy, He Yu said in an extremely gruff voice. Senior He Yu, once we get to safety, I'll immediately use by Radiant Saint Force Origin Energy to purge your poison, Jian Chen said. Suddenly, the feathers collapsed in countless, huge feathers shrank back to finger length, shooting through the air as red streaks of light toward Hong Lian. Hong Lian's armor reassembled. I was right. You indeed cannot last for very long. You've finally been forced out by me. Now hand over the saint's fruit. I won't make it difficult for you, the Path Lord's voice rang out from the sky. He seemed extremely nonchalant. He knew that Roy Jin and the others were protected by Origin Energy armors, but he continued to act like victory was in his grasp. A resplendent golden sword chi was what he received as a response. Clad in the sacred dragon's armor with the treasured bead hovering above his head, Roy Jin aggressively charged over with his sacred dragon's sword. The Path Lord showed nothing, but an undetectable sliver of fear still appeared in the depths of his eyes. He dared not to take the sword chi condensed from Origin Energy head-on, so he used World Force to disperse it. Although Roy Jin possessed the Origin Energy treasures, he was not an expert of the Origin realm. All he could do was make Saint Emperors fear him. He was unable to suppress 3 Saint Emperors with supreme force like Shaoling. Roy Jin kept the Path Lord busy as Hong Lian and He Yu conducted a slaughter beneath. This time, they did not hold back at all and fought as hard as they could. Very soon, a few weaker Saint Kings died to their hands. They died immediately since their souls failed to escape, and around a dozen other Saint Kings were also heavily injured. However, they were either saved by companions at a crucial moment or fled using secret techniques. The 5 old men from Mercenary City looked at each other and a sliver of determination appeared in their eyes. One of them said, whatever, we won't take the saint's fruit then. We're about to return to the earth soon anyway, so why not use our last bit of vitality to cast the absolute secret technique again? We can leave the fruit to someone talented in Mercenary City. Yeah, even if we die, we can't die in vain, the 4 other old men agreed. At that moment, all 5 of them had made up their minds about their deaths. Chapter 1165, Gathering of 4 Saint Emperors. The 5 special old men from Mercenary City began to cast their absolutely secret technique again. Since they had consumed a lot of vitality when they had cast the technique the first time, they could be described as close to the end of their lives. They did not have much vitality left, and their lives could be extinguished at any moment. They had reached their final moments, so casting it this time was much more difficult than the first. Just the time they spent charging up was much longer than before. Jian Chen killed through the crowd with He Yu and Hong Lian. He pushed his strength at the 7th heavenly layer of Saint King to the maximum, seemingly able to challenge an 8th heavenly layer Saint King. The Saint artifact hovered above his head, blocking powerful attacks from the 9th heavenly layer of great perfection from time to time. Even though that was the case, he was covered in blood. There was his own blood, as well as his opponent's blood. He was littered with wounds, but his strength remained the same and his presence was mighty with his tough chaotic body. Rui Jin and the Path Lord of Carnal Desire's fight was extremely intense. Both of their strengths had reached the apex, so every clash was devastating. Their battle high up the sky had gradually risen to the icy and dark outer space. Hong Lian, Heiyu, and Jian Shen had already charged out of the Saint King's encirclement. At this moment, Hong Lian's armor disassembled again and turned into 100-meter-long feathers that burned with endless white flames. It formed a huge wall of fire in the air, obstructing the human Saint Kings. I'll stop them. Heiyu, leave with Jian Shen first. Hong Lian maintained the wall of fire as she turned and gave an order to Heiyu. Heiyu nodded and did not add anything extra. He immediately grabbed Jian Shen by the arm and flew into the distance. He wanted to find some stable space to create a space gate and leave. His condition was even more severe than before. If he did not get it under control in time, he would probably become doomed. Leave won't be that easy. At this moment, a sneer rang through the space nearby. The space several hundred meters ahead rippled slightly and two burly men suddenly emerged. The appearance of the two people caused Jian Shen and Heiyu's facial expressions to drastically change. Heiyu stared at them with an ugly expression and growled, "Rulers of the Beast God continent, I never thought even you two would come." The two people were Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor, but compared to last time, they were both distinctly pale. Kaiser stared at the saint artifact above Jian Shen for a while and a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He sneered, "Hand over the saint's fruit and we won't make things difficult for you." Jian Shen put the saint artifact away. The white tiger was currently hiding within it, so he needed to remove all possibilities of Kaiser stealing the saint artifact. Afterward, with a flip of his hand, a ruined divine hall appeared. It was the Octaterra divine hall that had been smashed to pieces by Kaiser before. The divine hall had always been repairing itself, but it was rather slow, so it only seemed to be in a little better shape than before. It could still withstand a few attacks from Saint Emperors, however. Looks like the lesson from the barrier spirit of Mercenary City still wasn't enough. Do you still want to suffer the same outcome as well? A sliver of fear flashed through the very depths of Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor's eyes when they heard him mention the barrier spirit. They had already developed a fearful mentality for the barrier spirit since it was an existence that had truly surpassed Saint Emperor. However, Kaiser's eyes turned icy once again without much time. He coldly said, "We were too close to Mercenary City last time, which was why we disturbed the barrier spirit. It's very far away from Mercenary City here, so it's impossible for the barrier spirit to come here. You better give up on the thought of relying on it." The terrifying temperature from behind suddenly disappeared. Hong Lian had re-equipped the 9 refined Godfire feather mail. She was coated in terrifying white flames as she then charged toward Kaiser as a white streak. She did not pay any attention to the human experts behind. The two Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent were far more terrifying than them, and she knew it would be very difficult to escape once they got near Jian Shen. Heiyu clenched his teeth. Even though he was heavily poisoned, he had no other choice right now. All he could do was reluctantly charged up with his machete and keep the Tiger Emperor busy. A dragon's roar rang across the sky. Rui Jin had noticed the situation below as he fought against the Path Lord and immediately abandoned his opponent to return. He shot through the sky as a dazzling golden streak of light, just like a comet. He quickly made his way to the ground. "Golden Divine Dragon, our battle is still not over." The Path Lord also used his Saint Emperor abilities, moving faster than Rui Jin. He first blocked Rui Jin before striking with a hand full of vast energy. He stopped Rui Jin from providing assistance. "Path Lord, you're actually working with the experts of the Beast God continent." Rui Jin immediately understood the truth behind the matter with some thought. His face became extremely dark. The Path Lord said nothing. He used everything he had as a Saint Emperor to keep Rui Jin busy. They went back to outer space and neither of them could overcome the other. Jianchen did not pay attention to the battles of Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu. He immediately used the illusory flash, flying off into the distance as fast as he could. He could only depend on himself now. Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor sneered at the same time as they watched Jianchen leave. Kaiser steadily questioned, "Sangxiong, you're still not going to start moving? The sooner you take it, the sooner we can get back." Another figure appeared in the empty air. It was a white-clothed old man whose silver hair danced in the wind. He possessed an otherworldly charm and seemed to possess the presence of an immortal. The third Saint Emperor of the Beast God continent had come to the Tian Yuan continent as well. With all three of them present, only the greatest powers of the 10 protector clans could stop them. All the human experts' expressions changed, becoming ashen. All three Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent had gathered here, and the human Saint Emperor had switched sides, working with them to steal the Saint's fruit. What other power did they have to face them? Is the Saint's fruit going to end up with the magical beasts this time? A feeling of powerlessness engulfed many Saint Kings from the protector clans and the ancient clans, coupled with a deep disgrace. The Saint's fruit was a sacred item of the humans, and it had always been consumed by humans since ancient times. It had never been taken away by magical beasts. It would become an unredeemable disgrace etched into history if the Saint's fruit ended up with the magical beasts. Sangxiong levitated in the sky as he looked at Jianchen's back. A gleam of light flickered in his eyes as he hesitated. The Saint's fruit has actually been obtained by him. He's the person who's looked after the winged tiger god for so many years. He's the winged tiger god's savior, so do I lay my hands on him or not? Do I let him take the fruit and let him reach Saint Emperor? Or do I take the fruit so that Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor can heal up? At this moment, a vast presence appeared far away. It was as powerful as a Saint Emperor's, and actually momentarily drew the attention of the 3 Beast God continent experts. After charging up for so long, the 5 old men from Mercenary City finally used the absolutely secret technique again. The 5 of them poured their strength together and used their remaining vital energies to conjure Mo Tianyun's image. The Saint's fruit is a sacred item of the humans. It can be taken by any human, but it can never end up with outsiders, the 5 old men said in unison. Afterward, Mo Tianyun extended his hand and expanded to be 3,000 meters long. He grabbed at Sangxiong, and as the hand fell, it actually froze the space there, preventing Sangxiong from running away. He ended up being trapped by the giant hand. Booms constantly rang from the giant hand. Sangxiong was currently attacking with everything he had in an attempt to break through the hand. The 5 old men trembled violently. They became extremely pale. The secret technique was supported by their vital energies, so it was equivalent to siphoning away their lives. It had already been very difficult for the 5 of them to cast the secret technique a second time in their current conditions, so they had literally put their lives on the line. They could not last for very long. Do it. At the same time, the great elders of the Changyang clan secretly communicated with each other. They formed seals with their hands at the same time and used an ancient secret technique. Borrowing from the forces of the world, locus reversal. They called out at the same time. Suddenly, they disappeared, having moved to another location through the ancient secret technique. They had switched positions with the rock beside Jianchen, arriving by his side instantaneously. Don't resist. Relax. Changyang Zhu Shao spoke in a stern voice. They formed hand seals again and used the locus reversal a second time. This time, they traveled several dozen kilometers, appearing in a region of empty land with Jianchen. The people of the Changyang clan had escaped with the saint's fruit. The other humans all reacted by crying out. They quickly pursued. Changyang Qingyun glanced past the people pursuing them and heavily said, "The space here is unstable, so it's very difficult to create a space gate. Let's go." The other great elders did not hesitate at all, immediately leaving the area as quickly as possible with Jianchen. God damn it, how did it end up like this? Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor could not help but swear. They were extremely irritated. Originally, they had thought everything would be flawless, but never did they think that Sangxiong would end up trapped, allowing Jian Chen to flee with the saint's fruit. Little Phoenix, you're much stronger than before but still not enough to injure me. I have matters to attend to today, so I'll fight with you some other day, Kaiser growled. He wanted to go chase Jian Chen. However, Hong Lian immediately sent the scorching godfire hairpin at Kaiser with terrifying white flames, forcing him to face it seriously. He had no time to chase Jian Chen. Before we decide victory today, you won't be leaving, Hong Lian coldly said. Her attacks became more intense before pinning Kaiser down. He Yu was the same, using everything he had to keep the Tiger Emperor busy and prevent him from leaving. Although the Path Lord and Rui Jin fought an intense battle in outer space, they always paid attention to what was happening below. Seeing how Jian Chen had actually fled with the saint's fruit, the Path Lord immediately panicked. He no longer bothered with Rui Jin, wanting to pursue Jian Chen. Human Saint Emperor, our battle is still not over. With a golden flash of light, Rui Jin slashed across the top of the Path Lord's head while he was distracted. He cut through some hair, almost injuring the Path Lord. The Path Lord was flustered and exasperated. His face was pale white. He had said the same thing to Rui Jin just before. He did not think that the same line would be thrown back to him so quickly. Chapter 1166, Returning to the Protector Clan. 1. Jian Chen was carried along by the great elders of the Changyang clan, flying into the distance as quickly as they could. The great elders had all reached Saint King many years ago, so their grasp over space was much more powerful than Jian Chen's. At full speed, they were much faster than Jian Chen even when he used the illusory flash. At this moment, all of them were stern. They only bothered to travel toward a faraway region of space that was stable. They knew that they had basically become everyone's enemy by taking Jian Chen away like this. They were great elders of a protector clan and possessed exalted statuses, but no one worried about their identities when the saint's fruit was on the line. There were no saint kings that could resist the temptation of reaching Saint Emperor. As long as they became saint emperors, they had no need to fear the protector clans, so they obviously had no need to be afraid of offending them. A large group of human experts pursued from close behind. The people who knew the effects of the saint's fruit were affected in particular, having become green with greed. Some of them used secret techniques to travel faster, so they rapidly drew closer to Jian Chen and the others. Hong Lian, He Yu, and Rui Jin all kept a saint emperor busy each. They prevented the saint emperors from interfering with Jian Chen's escape, and they were in no shape to consider anything else. Borrowing from the forces of the world, locus reversal. The great elders of the Changyang clan used the secret technique again and traversed over 100 kilometers. Afterward, they continued to flee with Jian Chen. It was very taxing to use the secret technique, let alone the fact that they had to bring an additional person along. As a result, they could not use it continuously even with their strength, requiring a time to buffer. The two parties, where one ran and the other pursued, traveled for 1,000 kilometers before finally arriving in a region of space that was relatively more stable. Changyang Qing Yun immediately constructed a space gate. At the same time, over 10 balls of surging energy and sword chi shot over from behind with lightning-like speed. Every single attack possessed devastating power. They were all attacks from Saint Kings at great perfection, some from protector clans and others from ancient clans or independent cultivators. The violent attacks surged toward the space gate with unstoppable forces. Wherever they passed, the space would violently shake, as if it were about to shatter. The affected space impacted Changyang Qing Yun while he was creating a space gate as well, because the space there became rather unstable. Go quick! Changyang Qing Yun growled. His voice was filled with worry. All the great elders became extremely stern. Without any hesitation, they entered the space gate with Jian Chen as fast as they could. The space gate disappeared instantly after they had all entered it. The space there had also returned to how it was, and soon afterward, all the attacks landed on that region of space. It caused the space there to shatter and the surrounding radius of several thousand meters to violently tremble. Damn it, those bastards from the Changyang clan. We actually let them get away. I never thought that the Saint's fruit would end up with the Changyang clan in the end. Looks like another Saint Emperor will appear on our Tianyuan continent soon. It's just a pity that he's not a member of our clan, but the Changyang clans, sigh, it only appears after 40,000 years, something many of our ancestors have missed purely because of luck. I've missed it just like this. What a pity, what a pity, it's all because of those 3 vagrant magical beasts that don't belong to the beast god continent. If they didn't do everything they did to protect Jianshen, how would the fruit have ended up with the Changyang clan? Now they've done it. Not only do they have an unprecedented prodigy, they have an exceptional relationship with the winged tiger god. Coupled with a Saint Emperor in the future, is there still anyone on the Tianyuan continent that can stop them? All the experts broke into discussion. Regret and dejection crossed the faces of many while the experts from the protector clans appeared worried as well. The Changyang clan was now far more powerful than what they could imagine. None of them wished for a protector clan to be more powerful than themselves. Boom! 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 Several violent sounds rang out as violent energy splattered in all directions. The space shook heavily after being struck while the supreme presence of Saint Emperors filled the surroundings. It was enough to cause the ground to shake from the presences alone. Sangxiong stood proudly in the sky as he radiated with a supreme presence. He stood like he was a king looking down on his people. He had broken out of the secret technique from the 5 old men of Mercenary City with his supreme strength. His tremendous presence had directly crushed and collapsed Mo Tianyin's figure. The 5 old men violently jerked and a mouthful of blood shot out at the same time. The blood scattered into the air as mist, and they instantly became extremely pale. They were all haggard, and the light in the eyes of 4 of them quickly vanished, becoming dull. They collapsed to the ground. Only one of them managed to stay standing with much difficulty. The last old man stared fixedly at Sangxiong, who had broken free. He powerlessly said, "It's a pity that the 5 of us have already reached the end of our lives. Otherwise, before he could finish speaking, the light in his eyes faded rapidly as well. He had departed the world full of unwillingness and regret. Tianjian and the elders of Mercenary City stood silently from afar as they looked at the 5 ice-cold corpses of the old men. All of their faces had darkened in sorrow. They did not stop the 5 old men because they knew they did not have much time left. Even if they did not die here today, they would pass away in meditation in Mercenary City. The death of the 5 veterans has allowed the Tianyuan continent to keep the saint's fruit. They laid down their lives for a noble cause. They died spectacularly in battle and did not pass away silently in Mercenary City, Tianjian heavily said. Sangxiong slowly withdrew his supreme presence. He looked around nonchalantly and said, "The saint's fruit has already been taken away, and its whereabouts are unknown. It's about time I returned." Although he had spoken very ordinarily, his voice echoed through the surroundings, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. "No, Sangxing, we must obtain the saint's fruit. You are the fastest in the world. You should be able to catch them." Lankyros refused to give up. However, before he could finish speaking, Sangxiong had already shot off into the distance as a faint blur. He seemed to have fused with space completely, moving through it silently. His speed was unbelievable, disappearing in an instant. To no surprise, he headed to the Beast God continent. Sangxiong. The Tiger Emperor angrily roared. He was extremely unwilling to give up, and even Kaiser's complexion became extremely dark. "Let's go." Kaiser ordered a retreat as he ground his teeth. He immediately abandoned his opponent with Lankyros and left. This time, Hong Lian and He Yu did not stick to them desperately. They allowed him to leave, before heading to Rui Jin together. The Path Lord raised an eyebrow and said, "Golden Divine Dragon, our battle ends here. Farewell." With that, he was about to leave. "Leaving won't be that easy," Rui Jin icily exclaimed. His killing intent was sharp as his sword shone brightly with golden light. He clung onto the Path Lord tightly. "Scorching purgatory!" Hong Lian cried out from afar. She had already arrived and the large swathes of white flames had already surged from the scorching god fire hairpin, filling the region of outer space. It formed a huge fireball, enveloping both Rui Jin and the Path Lord. The terrifying temperature caused the space there to violently ripple. Even with the Path Lord's grasp over the mysteries of the world, which were far more profound than any Saint King's understanding, he was unable to use any spatial abilities to flee. Afterward, the hairpin flew into the fireball and shot toward the Path Lord. At the same time, Yu rushed in with his origin energy armor as well. He shot a blade of light from his machete toward the Path Lord. Chapter 1167, Returning to the Protector Clan, 2, the Path Lord of Carnal Desire's expression suddenly changed. He was still injured, having not yet recovered from the wounds caused by the barrier spirits of Mercenary City. He could temporarily protect himself as he fought against Rui Jin in this current state, but he had no confidence in being able to retreat when faced with attacks from all three of them. What pained him the most was the fact that all three of them were protected by origin energy armor. It was very difficult for him to harm them with his power as a Saint Emperor while his feigned techniques were ineffective due to the pearl that protected the soul. Their weapons also contained origin energy, something that only those beyond Saint Emperor could control. It was energy that belonged to a whole different domain, so even Saint Emperors found it difficult to withstand injuries caused by origin energy. The Path Lord became extremely grim. He collected the surrounding energy of the world with his abilities as a Saint Emperor and struck at the three of them with 3 palm strikes. Each strike was filled with extremely violent power, and they even contained a Saint Emperor's mysteries of the world. Even Saint Kings at great perfection would become as weak as ants before this great power. It was not something they could withstand at all. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and Yu showed no fear as they aggressively attacked the Path Lord. Before their origin energy weapons, the attacks were nothing. They collapsed the palm strikes using their weapons before continuing without slowing down, striking at the Path Lord with their origin energy weapons as they emitted a bright light. The three of them utterly hated the Path Lord, so they used everything they had. The origin energy weapons were swung as they stood in a triangle, where their vast presences caused space to freeze up. They locked tightly onto the Path Lord's presence. The Path Lord struggled to remain as composed as before. He suddenly roared, "Do you really think that I'm easy to be trifled with?" A vast and surging storm of energy erupted from his body, forming a whirlwind of energy that wreaked havoc in all directions. It caused space to shake and crack open everywhere. Extremely pure and powerful energy had condensed in both his hands. He avoided the furious Rui Jin and Hong Lian, charging toward Yu on of his own accord. One of his hands seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, sweeping through the air with a string of illusionary afterimages. It seemed slow, yet it struck Yu's machete extremely swiftly. His hand did not come in contact with the machete, but the energy in his hand slammed into the side of the blade. It knocked the machete out of Yu's hand and caused Yu's arm to become numb. The Path Lord's other hand also struck Yu's chest with lightning-like speed after knocking away the blade. The energy in his hand erupted, blowing Yu far away. Yu's armor flickered in color, blocking the force behind the palm strike. The Path Lord immediately charged through the opened. He knew that it was very difficult for him to injure the three of them, so there would be no benefits to gain if he continued fighting while heavily injured. At this moment, a terrifying wave of heat swept over from behind. The scorching god fire hairpin had shot over extremely quickly. It had basically reached the Path Lord's back already. The Path Lord had already run out of time to dodge. He turned around and hurriedly launched an attack with his hand, using the energy in the surroundings to block the attack. However, the Path Lord's palm strike was hurried. It lacked power, so the hairpin flew through it like a knife through hot butter, flying for the Path Lord's face. The Path Lord's eyes narrowed, and with a wave of his hand, a divine hall immediately flew out from his space ring. It became the size of a house in an instant, standing before him. The hairpin struck the divine hall and erupted with a deafening boom. The entire divine hall shook violently as cracks quickly expanded across it. At this moment, a resplendent golden light suddenly flashed behind the Path Lord's back. Roy Jin had appeared behind him at a certain moment. He gripped the sword with his right hand as he maintained a seal with his left. The sword stabbed toward the Path Lord as a streak of light. The Path Lord was shocked when he sensed what was happening behind him. Roy Jin had appeared too suddenly, and even he had failed to sense his movement. He praised inside, the various abilities and secret techniques of the Dragon Clan really are profound. Even as he thought that, he responded very quickly. He ignored the rippling space and instantly fused with his surroundings with his abilities as a Saint Emperor. He wanted to dodge Roy Jin's attack. Secret technique of the Dragon Clan, pin down space. At that crucial moment, Roy Jin's left hand suddenly pressed against the space there and instantly froze it, becoming as tough as rock. Caught off guard, the Path Lord was also affected. He froze up, having been pinned down. But, the next moment, the Path Lord broke through the frozen space with his great strength. He had forcefully broken through Roy Jin's secret technique, but it cost him a moment. He had lost the best opportunity to dodge, so Roy Jin's sword impaled him mercilessly and appeared from his back. The Path Lord produced a deep grunt. Being impaled by a sword with origin energy in the chest was definitely a horrible feeling. It was much worse than normal injuries. Bang! The Path Lord kicked back and landed a foot on Roy Jin's chest accurately. It knocked him far away, and the sword was drawn out as well. The Path Lord's white robes had already become dyed red with blood. His face was even paler now, and his injuries were even worse than before. Die, human Saint Emperor! Hong Lian shouted. Flames surged around her as she made her way around the divine hall. She continued to attack the Path Lord with her hairpin in her hand as she stared at him with icy cold killing intent. The Path Lord rapidly retreated. He glanced past the three of them coldly and gritted his teeth. If I had recovered from my injuries that the barrier spirit of Mercenary City gave me, just the three of you would not be enough to injure me. However, you three are still not enough to stop me from leaving. The Path Lord backpedaled and no longer faced the three of them head-on. His two hands slowly circled around with extremely profound truths of the world. They seemed to have created some connection with the region of space as the two resonated together. Void shatter. Suddenly, the Path Lord yelled out. Immediately, extremely powerful world force shook as the space in front of him shattered. It rapidly collapsed, becoming an eternal darkness. There was only void inside. Hong Lian's face changed slightly. She knew that the Path Lord could shatter and collapse space with his Saint Emperor abilities. Entering it would mean almost certain doom, so she immediately stayed far away from it. Chapter 1168, Returning to the Protector Clan, 3. The shattered space collapsed piece by piece while the affected area expanded. From afar, it looked like a huge black hole, preventing Roy Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu from getting anywhere close. They avoided it from afar. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires vanished behind the collapsed space while their visibility of his was obstructed. A while later, the space began to recover slowly and finally closed up completely, but the Path Lord was nowhere to be seen. We actually let him escape, Hong Lian said, exasperated. Saint Emperors know quite a few abilities. Facing Saint Emperors with our strength is obviously not a question, but killing them will possess a certain difficulty. Though, the human Saint Emperor has suffered a strike from me. My sword impaled his chest, and he won't be able to make a full recovery from that injury in a short amount of time. We failed to kill him, but we made him pay a price, Rui Jin said. His voice was also filled with some regret. We better go find Jian Chen now. He's left with the people of the Protector clans. He might be a part of them, but any connections of family or friends will become insignificant. I'm worried he'll come in danger. He's our only hope to return to our clansmen, so we can't let any accidents happen to him. Also, He Yu's situation is getting worse. He needs to be healed with the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force, Hong Lian sternly explained the situation. Rui Jin nodded. He immediately left with Hong Lian and He Yu, constantly casting secret techniques to search for Jian Chen's whereabouts. With their departures, the remaining, scattered group of Saint Kings in the air sighed before leaving as well. Many of them were filled with envy, regret, and an unwillingness to give up. Many of them had anticipated a day that they would become a Saint Emperor for a very long time. A position where they would stand at the apex and surpass the Protector clans. Now that they had just narrowly missed the Saint's fruit, they found it difficult to accept the arousal of hope and then utter despair. This was because there were not one Saint King who was not interested in the realm of Saint Emperors. Once a Saint King reached Saint Emperor, not only would it gift them with supreme power, their lives would be extended by several thousand years. The region outside the Death Nest became much quieter. Most of the Saint Kings had already left, and only a small number remained. They were unwilling to leave. When Jian Chen and the Great Elders emerged from the space gate, they were no longer in the original space. They had entered an independent space that had been split open. It was teeming with the energy of the world and the scenery was charming. It was a beautiful miniature world. Jian Chen glanced around as a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He had been here before, so he recognized the place with a single glance. It was the space inhabited by the Protector Changyang clan. Changyang Qingyun had brought them back to the Protector clan. The space was independent of the outside world, and the world gate would be tightly closed under ordinary circumstances, isolating it completely. People could only leave through a special method. Now that he was here, Jian Chen did not feel safe at all. Instead, he felt a great sense of danger, far greater than when he had been encircled by the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. Jian Chen's heart sank, but he showed none of that on his face. He glanced at the authoritative Great Elders around him secretly and discovered that they were all feeling joy and excitement from the bottom of their hearts. Jian Chen could even see burning desire and impatience in Changyang Qingyun's eyes. At this moment, Changyang Qingyun looked toward Jian Chen. Just when he wanted to speak, Jian Chen cut him off. Great Elders, I'm very heavily injured, so I need to find a place to heal immediately. Otherwise, it might leave behind injuries. Jian Chen was currently bathed in blood with nothing else to be seen. Vicious gashes littered his body all over. The gashes were bone-deep and ghastly. Without his chaotic body's toughness, someone else in a similar condition as him would probably have collapsed long ago. Xiangtian, your wounds are just far too heavy. Come with us to the Ancestral Hall to heal first. There are medicines there that can help you recover quickly, Changyang Zhu Yunshao said in concern. I thank you for your concern, but I have medicine on me. I can deal with my wounds myself. With that, Jian Chen's face changed and blood spurted from his mouth. He weakly said, my condition is rapidly worsening. I can't delay it any longer. I need to find a place immediately so I can go into seclusion and recover. With that, Jian Chen flew to a nearby mountain peak in a teetering fashion. He used the Emperor armament to carve out a cave and disappeared into it. Changyang Qingyun stared deeply at Jian Chen's back as he moved away. A gleam of light flickered through his eyes, and he became uneasy. However, he recovered very quickly and laughed aloud. I never thought that the saint's fruit would be obtained by our clan. This holds far too much importance for the clan. A saint emperor will appear in our Changyang clan soon. Yeah, once Xiangtian consumes the saint's fruit, he'll definitely reach Saint Emperor successfully with his talent. Changyang Zhu Yunshao faintly smiled. An indescribable pride was plastered on his face, and he glanced at Changyang Qin Yun, perhaps out of pure coincidence. With that, Changyang Qin Yun's face hardened, but it only lasted for a slight moment. He recovered in the blink of an eye and smiled faintly as well. You're right. Xiangtian's talent is unprecedented. He's achieved such great things in less than 100 years. I believe Xiangtian will break through to Saint Emperor very quickly and become a supreme expert that can shake the world. Alright, let's end the conversation here. We've all expended a lot of energy on our trip to the Death Nest, so we better go recover quick. We need to maintain our peak conditions to repel any sneak attacks from other experts. After all, the Saint's fruit holds far too much temptation. We need to be on guard at all times. The great elders all left together and headed to the central divine hall. Jian Chen stood within the cave with a rather dark expression. Through his presence, he had caught every single detail of the great elders' conversation and their changes in expression. He knew exactly how they had reacted. This place is indeed not safe. Changyang Qin Yun's greed for the saint's fruit is far too strong. The other great elders may not have shown it before, but who knows what they're thinking, Jian Chen thought. He had suddenly found that all the people of the Changyang clan were no longer reliable at that moment, including Changyang Zhu Shao and Changyang Zhu Yun Shao. This was because the saint's fruit was just far too enticing. As the only shortcut to Saint Emperor, any connections, like kinship or friendship, were as fragile as rice paper. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.